2023. Mr. Weston, can you provide a roll call, please?
Councilor Petrie.
Here.
Councilor Moore.
Here.
Councilor
Here.
Ronnie, I don't have Zoom up yet, but Councilor Ocholi, could you either raise your virtual hand or voice?
He is in, so, here, but he's not still in the attendees.
Okay. Can you get him on?
Yep, trying.
Mayor Pender?
Here.
So we have 4 of 7. Councilor Thompson says she's on her way.
She's parking right now.
We'll just give it a minute for Councilor Chole to join us.
And we're still missing Councilor Paulson.
He will be out today.
And just to clarify, he's out of town on a business trip that couldn't be rearranged. All right. Ronnie, is he attending?
But he looks like it now.
Okay, so we're,
Councilor Thompson is here.
all right, so ladies and gentlemen, we have scheduled a legislative land use hearing related to the adoption of King City's first master plan. Specifically, we have 2 ordinances to consider, an ordinance, or excuse me, on the agenda are 2 ordinances. An ordinance considering the land use file 2023-2 Kingston Terrace master plan, and an ordinance considering land use file 23-03 amending the King City comprehensive plan to support the Kingston Terrace master plan. The hearing format for this proceeding is different than a quasi-judicial land use proceeding, though members of the public provide testimony in the same manner. Members of the public may participate in person, in writing, or both. We ask that a copy of all written materials be submitted to our city clerk, who is Ronnie, sitting here, and who is monitoring Zoom, so that they can be made part of the record of the proceedings. The grounds for an appeal of a legislative decision are contained in ORS Chapter 197. Again, that's ORS Chapter 197, specifically ORS 197.620. 197.620. Following a staff report, we will be taking public testimony for in-person testimonials. Because this is slightly different than how we did it, I'm going to hand it to Ronnie to just explain how we're going to take public testimony in order. So just to reiterate, they need to.
Yeah, so once again, make sure you fill out the form in the back. Put your name and email address. If you're not in the email address already, I'll put you on there. And then make sure you have one of the forms that has an exhibit on it, and that just hand to me when you guys are called upon. Unfortunately, my numbers don't jive up right now because I don't have any stickers that go from 7 to on. Just raise your hand as the mayor will call on you to this week, okay?
Again, we won't be taking numbers. Please fill out the form, hand in your materials, and we will just be calling you in the order that first come, first serve. If someone desperately wants to go first, you can vigorously raise your hand. All right, for testimonials via Zoom, please write, so anyone on Zoom who would like to provide testimony, please write your name, address, and whether you are in support, in opposition, or neutral in the comments section. Names will be assigned an order. Typically we would do a number, but Mr. Smith will be just taking them in the order that I assume comes up on the Zoom screen, and we will receive your comments in that way. All right, once we call you to provide your testimony, please give your hearing comment registration form to City Recorder Ronnie Smith. Identify yourself, state your name and your address, and then make your statement. The maximum time allotted for testimony will be 3 minutes. Following public testimony, the City Council will hear rebuttals from staff and consultants, and then close the public hearing. All right. Mr. Weston, will you conduct the first reading, please?
Ordinance 2023-02, an ordinance considering the land use file 23-02, Kingston Terrace Master Plan. Title: whereas the City of King City initiated an expansion of the city's urban growth boundary, the UGB, and whereas the city adopted the concept plan for URA 6D in 2018 as approved by Resolution 2018-03 to help guide future planning activities, and whereas to further support the concept planning effort, the city adopted the housing needs analysis in 2018 as approved by ordinance number 2018-02 to identify the city's 20-year land needs. And whereas on December 6, 2018 and December 13, 2018, the Metro Council held public hearings to hear public testimony and apply applicable decision-making criteria. And whereas the Metro Council approved ordinance 18-1427 on December 13, 2018. And whereas in 2019, the city changed the name of the project from URA 60 to Kingston Terrace Master Plan Area. And whereas in accordance with the Public Involvement Plan 2021, the City of King City has provided several opportunities for public involvement in the master plan development, including but not limited to public project websites, online open houses, mail-in surveys, in-person tabling events, open houses, and community newsletters. Whereas the city provided notice of the hearings before the Planning Commission and the City Council as required by ORS 227.186, Section 4. And whereas on April 26, 2023, the King City Planning Commission held a public hearing and considered all public testimony and recommended that the City Council approve and adopt the Kingston Terrace Master Plan. And whereas the city was notified on May 10, 2023 by Metro that the city had met all applicable conditions outlined in Metro Ordinance 18-1427. And whereas on June 21st, 2023, the City Council of King City held a public hearing to consider the Planning Commission's recommendation, hear public testimony, apply applicable decision-making criteria, and consider appropriate findings and conclusions in support of the adoption. And whereas based on the recommendations, evidence, and public testimony already in the record, and the evidence and testimony presented at the June 21st, 2023 City Council public hearing. And whereas Exhibit A shows the Kingston Terrace Master Plan and map, and whereas evidence exists within the record to demonstrate that the proposed Kingston Terrace Master Plan, including the map, meets the local, regional, and state laws requirements as described in the recommended findings and conclusions. Now, therefore, the City of King City ordains as follows. Section 1, findings. Based on the findings, the City of King City, Kingston Terrace Master Plan is consistent with statewide planning goals, King City Comprehensive Plan, Metro Urban Growth Boundary Decision, Ordinance 18-1427. Findings of fact in support of the Kingston Terrace Master Plan are adopted by the City Council and attached as Exhibit A. Section 2, severability clause of any section, subsection, sentence, clause, paragraph, phrase, or portion of this ordinance is for any reason held invalid or unconstitutional by a court or competent jurisdiction. Such portion shall be deemed a separate, distinct, and independent provision, and such holding shall not affect the validity of the remaining portion thereof. Section 3, effective date. This ordinance shall be effective 30 days after its adoption. Read the first time on June 21st, 2023, and moved to the second reading by roll call vote of the City Council. Read the second time and adopted by the City Council on the date displayed, because that's not been determined yet.
Yeah.
And then you want me to read the second ordinance?
Please.
Our second ordinance of the day, and within the same hearing, is Ordinance 2023-03, an ordinance considering land use file 2303, an ordinance amending the King City Comprehensive Plan to support the Kingston Terrace Master Plan. Whereas the city adopted the King City Concept Plan for Urban Reserve Area 60 in 2018, setting a vision for urban growth on the west side of King City. And whereas at the time, the land covered by the area plan was outside the urban growth boundary. And whereas in 2018, the ordinance 18-1427 expanded the urban growth boundary to include the area covered by the area plan. And whereas both the King City Concept Plan and the Kingston Terrace Master Plan set a foundation for future development of the area plan now within the urban growth boundaries. And whereas as a condition of approval of the 2018 UGB expansion was the city adopt a master master plan for the area added to the urban growth boundary within 4 years. And whereas the area added to the urban growth boundary in 2018 became known as Kingston Terrace planning area, and whereas the city desires to adopt the master plan for the Kingston Terrace planning area within or as near to the original 4 years conditions, and whereas the master plan provides the guiding principles and policies for future land use, public realm development, and provisions of necessary infrastructure, among other related elements, and whereas, like many communities, King City needs more housing, including for households that cannot afford to rent or buy many of the housing options available in and around King City today. And whereas in 2021, the Equitable and Middle Housing Ordinance adopted in King City adopted a number of new policies related to new housing and the number of allowed units of housing that calculated, and whereas the city's council's current goals include a goal focused on exploring ways to provide more affordable home ownership opportunities, and whereas the city performed a housing needs analysis as part of the concept planning effort to determine needs and strategies to address the needs, and whereas the condition of Metro's urban growth boundary expansion and city policy directed finding ways to incorporate more accessory dwelling units into the fabric of the future neighborhoods, and whereas the condition of Metro's urban growth boundary expansion, state statute and rules related to the 2019 Housing Bill 2001, and implementing local policies adopted with the middle housing in King City require middle housing, as defined by the state and in King City's development code, be widely allowed in the future neighborhoods, and whereas the Kingston Terrace master plan provides the opportunity for developing a wide variety of housing, meeting a variety of needs, and whereas the city desires the design of the new neighborhoods to complement and connect to existing nearby neighborhoods and the city as a whole, and whereas the city desires safe, functional, and comfortable transportation options for a variety of modes of travel, and whereas the city performed public engagement, including multiple focus groups, surveys, and other public events to gather a variety of input, including from individuals not historically well represented in the planning process. And whereas the consultants and staff, including planning commission and city council members, held multiple open house sessions and work sessions, each regarding the Kingston Terrace master plan, providing ample input to guide the development of the plan along with the public. And whereas interested parties have been afforded the opportunity to participate and inform the development of the master plan and review it in draft form. And whereas required notice of public hearing has been provided to affected property owners, nearby properties, and interested parties, as well as published in the Oregonian, posted on the city's website, and posted in a variety of public areas and city buildings, all in accordance with public hearing and notice procedures that are set forth in the King City Municipal Code. And whereas the Planning Commission held a public hearing on April 26, 2023 to review the proposed master plan and comprehensive plan text amendments, and whereas the commission afforded all interested parties an opportunity to be heard on this subject and has entered all available evidence and testimony into the public record of their proceedings, and whereas the Planning Commission duly considered the subject, including the staff recommendations and all the exhibits and testimonies included and offered by interested parties, and in adopting Planning Commission Resolution Number LEU 2303, recommending adoption of the proposed master plan and comprehensive plan text and map amendments to the City Council. And whereas the City Council held a public hearing on June 21st, 2023 to consider the Planning Commission's recommendation and otherwise review the proposed master plan and comprehensive plan text and map amendments. And whereas the City Council afforded all interested parties an opportunity to be heard on this subject and has entered all available evidence and testimony into the public record of their proceedings. And whereas the City Council duly considers the Planning Commission's recommendation and other available information, including the staff recommendation and all exhibits and testimony included and offered by all interested parties. Now therefore, the City of King City ordains as follows. Section 1, finding that the City Council does hereby adopt the planning staff report attached hereto as Exhibit A and attachments as presented at the June 21st, 2023 public hearing, including the findings and recommendations contained therein. Section 2, amendments to Kingston Terrace Master Plan is hereby added as a supporting document to the King City Comprehensive Plan and has the full force and effect of the Comprehensive Plan. Section 3, the official King City Comprehensive Plan map is hereby amended to designate the master planning area as shown in page of the master plan. Severability clause, if any section, subsection, sentence, clause, phrase, paragraph, or portion of this ordinance is for any reason held invalid or unconstitutional by a court of competent jurisdiction, such portion shall be deemed as separate, distinct, and independent provision of such holding shall not affect the validity of the remaining portion hereof. Effective date, this ordinance shall be effective 30 days after its adoption, read this first time on June 21st, 2023, and moved to second reading by roll call vote of the City Council.
Thank you, Mr. Weston. All right, I call to order the public hearing regarding ordinances 2023-2, an ordinance considering the land use file 2023-2 Kingston Terrace Master Plan, and 2023-3, an ordinance considering land use file 23-03, amending the King City Comprehensive Plan to support the Kingston Terrace Master Plan. Public hearing is now open. All right. This is a legislative hearing. We do not follow strict ex parte disclosure requirements. Does any member of the audience in the room or on Zoom wish to challenge the jurisdiction of the City Council to hear this matter? If so, please state your name and address for the record. Right, I'm hearing none in the room. Any on Zoom? All right, hearing none. We will move on. Does any member of the council want to disclose any actual or potential conflicts of interest? We'll give a moment for Mr. Ocholi. So I made this same statement at our transportation system plan. Right? I make this, I don't believe I need to disclose this, but in full transparency because it's come up in the past. I live on Capulet Lane. Capulet Lane is in the, was in both the TSP and in the master plan. All of us are residents of King City. We are all some way affected by these considerations. I do not believe I have any conflict of interest by virtue of where I live, either actual or potential. But I put it on the record because it has been brought up previously, so I wanted to put it on the record. Other than that, I have no other potential or actual conflicts. If anyone else wishes to make a statement, please do so. And Smart, no need to respond, but if you want to make any disclosures, please raise your hand on Zoom. Give it about 10 seconds. All right, hearing none, we will move on. Does any member of the audience wish to challenge an individual member of City Council, either in the room or on Zoom? All right, hearing. Oh, sorry. I heard noise. But, all right, hearing none, and I don't see anyone raising their hand. Can you just double check the comments? But hearing none, we will move on. All right. For all those wishing to testify, please be aware that if you fail to raise an issue in person, on Zoom, or by letter today to the City Council, you will be unable to raise that issue at a subsequent time on an appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals. Testimony and evidence must be directed towards the criteria that staff will describe or other criteria in the plan or land use code which you believe applies to the decision. Failure to specifically address the approval criteria that staff will describe also precludes the raising of an issue related to those criteria on appeal. At this time, I call for staff to present the proposal along with applicable approval standards and to make a recommendation.
Mayor and Councilor, we're here to consider the Kingston Terrace Master Plan and the off plan amendments associated with the Kingston Terrace Master Plan. In your packet, you will see a series of a list of all the components of the master plan. Links to those items can be found on the project website, kingcitymasterplan.com. Kingcitymasterplan.com. Yes. With that, there are many components to the master plan. There are parks, there are streets, there's the alternatives analysis that was conducted by SCJ, and Sylvester's online right now to provide any sort of technical, answers that you might have, or questions, technical answers to questions you may have. And so I'm gonna basically hand it off to our consultant, Mr. Bout with 3J, who has done the bulk of the listing and has a presentation to present on the Kingston Terrace master plan and planning areas. And with that, I'm gonna hand it off.
Thank you, Mike. Good morning, Mayor Fender and councilors. My name is Steve Faust with 3J Consulting. On Zoom today are two members of the consultant team, Marcy McAnally with FirstWorks. She'll be giving part of this presentation today. As Mike mentioned, Ann Sylvester with FCJ Alliance is here to answer questions. And Keith Biden, the city's contract planner, is here as well to answer questions. Slide, please, Ryan. So today we're here to ask City Council to approve and adopt the Kingston Terrace Master Plan and associated comprehensive plan amendment. Next slide. As you know, work on this, not just this project, but for the planning for this area has taken place over a long period of time, since 2011, when Metro designated the area as Urban Reserve Area 6D. A concept plan was adopted in 2018, and Metro approved that urban growth boundary expansion for Urban Reserve Area 6D at that time. In 2020, both the Transportation System Plan and King City Master Plan processes were initiated. In 2021, in response to both Metro requirements and community desires, we initiated an analysis of circulation alternatives, looking for a route for the east-west collector road. And now here we are in 2023. The Transportation System Plan has come before you, and now we're here with the Kingston Terrace Master Plan. Next slide. We conducted, a number of community engagement activities over the course of this project. As Mr. Weston mentioned, there's a project website, and mailed and electronic public notices were given for all of our 5 public meetings, or 6. We conducted 6 public meetings, some online, some in person. There were 5 meetings of the Stakeholder Advisory Committee and the Technical Advisory Committee. There was an online open house and a number of online surveys. We conducted a series of stakeholder interviews and conducted outreach to both Spanish-speaking and Korean-speaking communities. Next slide. Overall, community members participating in the process are generally supportive of the overall plan, but with some strong opposition to and concerns about, first, extension of the Southwest Fisher Road over the existing conservation easement. There's concerns about impacts to natural resources and impacts to existing neighborhoods. And to a lesser degree, we've seen community concern about housing density and the mix of housing types that are planned for the Kingston Terrace area. Next slide, please. The Kingston Terrace Master Plan carries forward the frameworks used in the 2018 concept plan, including natural systems, land use, mobility, and public utilities and services. And we'll go over each of those frameworks briefly today. And in addition, there are 2 implementation sections, one on infrastructure funding and one on implementation measures. Next slide. Each of the framework sections includes 3 components: a summary of base conditions, and new information that's been gathered since adoption of the concept plan, policies, and implementation strategies.
Steve, can I interrupt real quick? Can I just ask everyone to please mute your phones, or put them on silent, and apologies. Thanks, Steve.
Sure. Okay, we'll get started with natural systems. Yep, next slide, please. So base conditions, wetland, riparian, stream, and upland habitat quantity and quality is greater and of higher value closer to the Tualatin River. The Kingston Terrace Master Plan included a refined review of natural resources and an analysis of upland habitat. Natural resources are regulated at the time of development by different federal, state, regional, and local bodies. So water bodies and wetlands are regulated by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and the Oregon Department of Environmental Quality. Water body and wetland buffers, so those riparian areas, are regulated by Clean Water Services, and upland habitat is regulated by the City of Kingston. So this is a map of the water bodies and wetlands that are regulated by regulated by state and federal agencies. Slide, please. These are the, you can see the water bodies, but the green areas around them are the wetland buffers that are regulated by Clean Water Services. Next slide. And then this is a preliminary map of upland habitat using a geographic information system data from Metro that includes both Class 1 and 2 riparian buffers, and then Class A and B upland habitat. I'll talk more about that in a moment, but city staff, Keith Line in particular, is currently working on code amendments to address what's known as Metro Title 13, which regulates upland habitat, and we can talk more about that later. Next slide. Natural systems policies. Number one, adopt a conservative approach to protecting natural areas. As I mentioned, we are protecting all the areas that we showed on the map. We are taking a closer look at the Metro Class B upland habitat. That's what Mr. Leiden is working on right now, because some of the areas mapped are clearly under agricultural use right now, so we want to refine that Class B upland habitat. We also will be supplementing the protection of these resources in certain cases with open space designations. Number two, improving the quality of natural resources through development. We aim to prevent damage on low quality resource areas, and in those higher quality resource areas, pursue active environmental repair. We're working with Clean Water Services to do so. Their involvement, the development generates both the opportunity and the funding to allow restorative practices to be implemented. Number three, feature natural areas and bring nature into the neighborhoods. We proposed a system of public trails, which Marcy McAnally will go over in the park section of our presentation. And then we look to improve wildlife habitat and water quality treatment. Implementation strategies. The city will enact required regulations to protect natural resources, implement additional measures as needed to supplement those required protections, provide a network of trails throughout the Kingston area, and then again, reduce runoff and heal existing erosion damage by implementing stream restoration projects, maintaining and improving deep-rooted vegetation, and attenuating stormwater flows from current and new development. Now we'll go over the land use portion, and I'm going to hand it over to Marcy McAnally for this portion of the presentation.
Good morning, Mayor and Council members. I'm Marcy McAnally, architect and urban designer with Works. We've been working on the project since concept planning began in 2017. Next slide, please. As with during the master plan process, as with all of the other framework, so discipline areas, we went back and updated the base conditions that had been prepared for the concept plan to confirm that assumptions made earlier were the same. It would apply to the master plan. And we did find that the land use vision and principles that center the unique natural features of this area and the mix of housing are still valid and achievable and apply. We had the third economic study prepared for the area since the concept planning initiated, and it was done for the TSP. It upheld earlier projections that 3,300 to 3,600 homes could be accommodated here. And during the intervening period between the concept plan and the master plan, King City adopted the House Bill 2001 amendments called the Middle Housing Amendments, along with most cities in the metro area and the state of Oregon. King City was required to change its zoning code so that it allowed a mix of housing types called middle housing types above and beyond accessory dwelling units, but that include duplexes, triplexes, quadplexes, townhomes, and cottage clusters. So those are those housing types as of that period now included and provable, and will make up much of the housing of this area. In addition, House Bill 2001 required that cities adopt new rules for master planned portions of their cities or areas that would amount to about 20 dwelling units per net acre on average for those areas, to prove that they could provide the necessary infrastructure to support that density. Also, during the intervening period, the neighboring River Terrace has continued to plan. The city of Tigard embarked on River Terrace 2.0, and many of their goals complement the Kingston Terrace master plan, concept plan goals. Next, please. Just to remind, the land use policies that continue to be maintained are neighborhoods integrated with nature, with natural resources preserved. That is required, but also it's desired that natural areas and parks be integrated into all neighborhoods. When we look at the comprehensive plan, it will become clear that every neighborhood is largely surrounded by what will be natural resource area protected. The neighborhoods are really defined by the natural areas. There's an intention to the parks planning, and I will describe that in a few slides, to make parks and trails accessible to all residents, not just residents who are fortunate enough to live along the edge of the development. King City plans to use developer agreements to designate the precise parcels of land for parks and obtain, it could be a combination of these things, obtain funds through an SDC allocation to acquire property for specific parks. Next. And the land use policies also validate a mixed income neighborhoods throughout the area. It's been kind of difficult to explain how the zoning works in this area because there's no high density, mid density, or low density area. There's a mix of housing throughout each neighborhood, although there are more open spaces in the eastern part of the neighborhood and fewer or more plaza-like open spaces on the western portion of the plan area. The amount of housing, the type of housing is intended to be very egalitarianly spread out. And so there will not be single dwelling homes along the natural resource edge and higher density housing kind of segregated up toward Beef Bend. That's really the opposite philosophy that we're applying here. And it's also very consistent with the middle housing rules that the state passed over. Next. So the implementation strategies that are making their way into the code, the community development code amendments, which you will be seeing in a period of time in the future, include these master plan neighborhoods that are identified, the town center, Main Street area to the west, a neighborhood called Beef Bend to the north, toward the southern central area, central neighborhood, and toward the eastern edge, the rural character neighborhood. These neighborhood development areas will define the uses that are permitted, but generally it's mostly residential uses in the Beef Bend central and rural character neighborhoods. And there is residential that of a higher density and mixed use development, and also some municipal uses in the town center area. And I'm going to talk about the parks next or shortly. And I wanted to explain that there's a what we call a transect approach toward this from a more dense development center of each neighborhood lobe toward the natural area edge. That does inform the nature of the parks, and I'll explain more about that in a moment. But the parks are also part of a regional framework. They will connect to the Lasage Park, future Lasage Park, and Tigard Parks, and existing King City Parks, and also the Metro Regional Trail. So let's talk about the next slide, please. So this is the comprehensive plan map, and it shows the 4 neighborhood zones. The legend to the right shows their color, the Beef Bend, the central rural character, town center, Main Street. And equally important is the floodplain, the Title 13 upland class, the riparian class 1 and 2 are all shown in various hatching styles. You can see that those areas are protected, although they're within the zoned areas. They will not be, their developability is subject to delineation that would take place at development, but they will largely be undeveloped. I want to point out that there's a recreation open space area also that includes the Kingston easement, and that just assumed that those areas are going to be difficult to develop. And so and they are also in the floodplain. So they've already been marked off as recreation open space. Next slide, please. The parks master plan section goes into quite a bit of detail about the parks for the whole neighborhood. And I want to point out that there are approximately, this is in addition to the natural resource areas, there's about 5 acres of parks per 1,000 people allocated to this area. That's somewhat more than most cities allocate for parks per 1,000. The future park areas are generally located, not specifically located. As I mentioned earlier, many of these will be located when the development occurs through developer agreements and SDC exactions that help acquire property. The circles, though, around the green splotches represent a 1/4 mile walking distance service area. And the master plan specifies that amount of acreage for that type of park, type of park that's shown in the legend, must be supplied within that 1/4 mile walking area service area. Next. Can we go to the next slide, please?
Just one second,
yes.
Just one moment. We had a visitor come, so Ronnie stepped away from the computer, but Mike is heading over there now.
Okay. I'm going to talk about the street system, the mobility section. Again, we updated the base conditions that were completed for the concept plan for the master plan. And some of the updates to the mobility base conditions were more robust as a set than any other discipline or issue area. I'll just run through some of those that were completed. They include the TSP, so the city's first transportation system plan was drafted, and an east-west alignment study was completed, and it verified that an internal system of streets and paths to maximize connectivity, safety, meet regional goals, and serve local infrastructure would be needed. During the east-west alignment study, preferred alternative number 2 was identified. I want to caveat all the things that I'm going to talk about next as the implementation, the execution of the street network will take a very long time to build out. And we believe the immediate focus on completing this street network, according to the TSP, will be in the western part of the area. And I want to also explain that there's a context-sensitive design approach that's been applied to every single street in the area above and beyond what the TSP requires. So it allows streets to look very different in each area. Next. For example, the street that runs, that's an extension of Fisher Road, will run from Roy Rogers to 137th. Its exact alignment is not determined, but generally shown here. It needs to intersect at most of the locations, at all of the locations that are shown with a circle. But between, within each segment, they're very different in character. And I want to emphasize the segment that's circled number 4 and talk about this section right here. The cross section that's shown on the left. It's been built into the master plan and will be part of the community development code. That street may be very narrow and could, the goal is to minimize the right-of-way. I want to emphasize too that we have a series of collectors and arterials. These are, arterials, which are Beef Bend and Roy Rogers, and collectors and neighborhood routes that run internally within the area. And the collectors and neighborhood routes are only 2 lanes, each of them. While they're designated as a collector or a neighborhood route through the TSP, it will actually be quite difficult to see any difference in their cross-section or character. Next. Here is the neighborhood mobility street network called the Backbone Streets Network. And this is a little hard to read, but the complete network is shown. These are just the backbone streets, which are made up of, as I mentioned, arterials at the perimeter, except for 137th is not an arterial. These are identified, the solid lines within are identified as collectors, and the dotted dashed lines are neighborhood routes. The goal is to have narrow streets that control traffic and tame traffic, protect pedestrians, reduce cut-through traffic, partly by the placement of roundabouts and traffic calming circles at most intersections of these arterials and collectors. And there's been very careful attention paid to allowing real movement for really safe, family-friendly movement for bicycle users and pedestrians throughout the area. I also want to emphasize that what you see here as a street network are just the collectors and neighborhood routes. There will be a finer grained network even within these areas made up of local streets and alleys. The goal from the beginning from the concept plan is that the big streets like Beef Bend should be rethought and designed so that they connect, not divide, especially to connect the Tigard River Terrace area to the King City Town Center and the eastern neighborhoods of Tigard and Washington County to the eastern neighborhoods of King City. So a lot of attention has been paid and will be built into the master plan, and even further dimensioned and defined within the community development code about the nature of Beef Bend, for example, the number of intersections, safe places for pedestrians and bicyclists to cross and to walk along and bike along, and that in even some areas within the town center, it may perform more like a main street and not a highway. So it's quite different. It will be a very different future for these streets than what you see today. And the network also is part of that new future, a walkable network that links neighborhoods and provides a lot of frontage for housing and street trees, a wide park strip for really healthy, strong canopy of street trees, for example. Next. So I want to talk about roundabouts specifically. Roundabouts, the modern roundabout design makes a designated space for pedestrians and bicyclists to cross. You can see a refuge here that's long enough for a bicyclist, even with pulling a trailer, say, to stop and see the direction of travel. It's built into this design is built into our assumption about these roundabouts. Next. Traffic circles occur, they're the smaller circle on most intersections, or all intersections, I should say, of neighborhood routes and some neighborhood routes and collectors, intended to slow traffic and reduce the desire to cut through. Next. The master plan street and path types have been worked into the community development code. The transportation system plan functional classifications has been blended with a context sensitive design that as I mentioned, so even while we have a collector that runs east to west, the context sensitive design approach allows it to change character as it passes through different types of neighborhoods. The street and path dimensional and design characteristics for each of these streets is in the community development code, but it's generalized in the master plan, and it's also specifically described in the transportation system plan. And the Kingston Terrace backbone street system is a major piece of the mobility. I want to mention too, I didn't stress this earlier, that the backbone street system forms the boundary for the 4 different neighborhoods. I think that's the end of my section.
Thank you, Marcy. Now I'll talk about public utilities and services. Next slide, please. Base conditions for water. Water is provided to King City and will be provided to Kingston Terrace by the city of Tigard. Main extensions and increased storage capacity will be needed to serve the area. Many conversations with Tigard, and they are prepared to serve the area. Tigard is in the process of updating their water master plan, and some more details, more of the details will be available when that master plan update is completed. Next slide. For sanitary sewer, Kingston Terrace will connect to the Clean Water Services Regional Sanitary System. There is the River Terrace South Pump Station along Roy Rogers Road that serves the western portion of the Kingston Terrace area. There is Clean Water Services has a regional sanitary sewer concept plan in progress that Kingston Terrace, King City will adhere to when that is complete. Clean Water Services, as part of that study, is looking for opportunities to co-locate infrastructure as desired along the Fisher Road extension, but pump stations may be needed. We'll know more when that study is complete. Stormwater. Natural drainage ways in this area we know are susceptible to erosion and degradation from high flows. Future development should coordinate with upstream planning efforts to mitigate high flow events and prevent further degradation. Clean Water Services is also undertaking a stormwater study for this region, and they are looking to identify opportunities for regional stormwater facilities to incorporate stormwater management into new roads, parks, and green spaces, looking for water quality treatment of existing impervious areas, and to enhance streams to a more natural state.
Steve, I apologize. I think we're behind on a slide.
Oh.
There we go. Okay. Thank you.
All the things I just said.
Yeah, thank you.
Next slide, please, Ronnie. We'll go to the policies. Number 1, take actions to reduce runoff and field erosion. That includes integrated stormwater management, coordination with upstream efforts to mitigate high flow events, and regional stormwater facilities. Number 2, coordinate co-location of utilities with infrastructure. The city has been in conversations with the city of Tigard, Washington County, and Clean Water Services to coordinate efforts there. And then on the private franchise utility side with Portland General Electric, the Bonneville Power Administration, and Kinder Morgan that has facilities in the utility easement near 137. Next slide, please. For implementation strategies, water, coordinate with the city of Tigard to ensure sustainable and efficient water provision. Sanitary sewer and stormwater, the city will be implementing recommendations that come out of the Clean Water Services regional study. Slide, please. Now I'll talk briefly about the funding strategy that was prepared by SDS Group. Next slide, please. This table shows the planned public facility capital costs and baseline funding gap. Public infrastructure includes transportation, parks, sanitary sewer, water, and stormwater. These infrastructure improvements are being looked at through a separate process that will look at system development charge methodology and updates. But you can see on the far right-hand side the projected gap to fund these different facilities for transportation, which is one of the larger items there. Parks, sanitary sewer is mostly even in terms of cost and revenue. Water and stormwater. Next slide, please. This table illustrates the funding strategy for transportation arterials. The city will look to existing Washington County TDT funds and state MSTIP funds with potential for Metro grants to fund arterials. For collectors and bicycle and pedestrian facilities, again, existing TDT funds from Washington County and a supplemental SBC for those collector roads. Local streets will be funded by developers. In terms of parks, the city will be updating its citywide parks SBC and consider a supplemental SBC for Kingston Terrace. Neighborhood parks and pocket parks will be developer funded. Community recreation facilities and trails, the city would look to a new urban renewal area for Kingston Terrace with advanced financing through a bond issued by the city. Storm drainage, the city would support clean water services and planning and financing some regional facilities. Sanitary sewer, existing system development charges and rates should cover those capital costs for sanitary sewer. Water, existing system development charges along with a supplemental connection charge would be required to fully cover the cost of water systems, and then local utility connections are covered by development. Next slide, please.
Can you give us just a second to kind of run through this one? We kind of got a little behind.
Realize it's a little hard to read here. And as I mentioned, the system development charges will be advanced through a separate process that will come before you subsequent to this process. Next slide, please. In terms of the comprehensive plan, this identifies the Kingston Terrace master plan area as a special planning area. It includes findings from the Kingston Terrace master plan and carries over the policies that I presented to you today. In terms of next steps, there is work taking place on both the community development code to implement the plan and, as I mentioned, the funding strategy. Development phasing and the annexation strategy is one piece of that. New development requirements for the community development code will be consistent with the Kingston Terrace master plan. It will identify planning rules for King City and partner jurisdictions and include those funding mechanisms for public infrastructure. With that, thank you again for your time, and we're happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you, Steve. All right. Now we move into our testimony from our members of the audience. First, we will take, does any member of the audience, and we're gonna first, because we have more people here in the room, we're gonna take comments here in the room first, and then those on Zoom after. We did it backwards the last time, if you remember, if you were here for the TSP public testimony. So first, we will take any members of the audience who wish to speak in favor of this application. And again, we have 3 minutes allocated. I will set a timer and make it visible. And if you can state your name and address for the record and provide your, there you are, you already followed directions, great. Okay. And Mike, do we have a microphone? I don't know. Your voice is good. Yes, your voice is good, but yeah, it's just for those online. If anyone on Zoom is having a difficulty hearing any public testimony, go ahead and raise your hand during the testimony. But for now, we will move forward without a microphone.
Mayor Fender and council, my name is Gretchen Diener. I live at 16585 Southwest Royalty Parkway here in King City. My background, I was a real estate and land use lawyer for 40+ years. And I previously served on the King City Planning Commission and the City Council, and was actively involved in the entire concept planning project, served on the Metro Impact Metropolitan Policy Advisory Committee as a representative for cities in Washington County, and advocated for approval by Metro of the concept plan leading to the approval to bring the area into the urban growth boundary. Since I went off council, I have backed off and made sure that I didn't have any contact with anyone involved directly, but I've been following the process very closely. And I want to compliment staff, the consultants, and everyone involved in this process. Nobody is ever 100% happy with any change. Change is hard. It is always going to impact some interests, but it is the duty of the City Council to look at what is best for the entire community, not just particular property owners, whether they're going to impact it or not. And most of the opposition I understand their interests. I started CPO 4K because of flooding problems down below caused by Washington County development in earlier years. But we need to look at what's best for the entire community and make sure that as development occurs, if it develops, which is not a given, it's possible nobody wants to develop and none of this will ever happen. But as it develops, that it is done thoughtfully with serious concern for all of the issues that have been raised by those who are opposed to the adoption of this plan. With that, I'd like to make it clear, I certainly support the adoption of the plan. And again, I thank all the hard work done by all those involved, including the Planning Commission and the City Council. Thank you.
Thank you. With 12 minutes, 12 seconds to spare. All right. Do we have any others in this room who would wish to speak in favor of this application? All right, moving to Zoom. Is there anyone on Zoom who wish to speak in favor of this application? I need someone else's. I'm getting too many messages.
I'm not sure if we have anyone. We have 4 people that have indicated that they would like to speak. I have Mr. Seibel, Ms. Frankie, Mr. Mitchell, and Ms. Mosley. I believe all those are in already presented in opposition.
Okay. All right. We will go ahead and move on to neutral positions. Is there anyone in the room who would like to provide neutral comments? Okay. Hearing none, we will move. I will give an opportunity to those on Zoom in case any are neutral. Please indicate by raising your hand on Zoom if you have neutral comments. Otherwise, we will move forward with opposition comments. All right, hearing none, we will move on to members of the audience who wish to speak in opposition to this application. We will just do it by the order. So if anyone desperately wants to go first, vigorously raise your hand. Otherwise, I will just call you in an order I see you. So go ahead and raise your hand if you'd like to start your testimony. All right. Now, good morning, thank you.
Good morning. Good morning.
And we have, so unfortunately, my work email is attached to this, so I'm constantly getting notices. For Smart, okay, we will make sure and get him a copy of that. Does anyone have a phone that we can use as the, if you put on a 3-minute timer? Okay, so I don't want to be rude to anyone, and I don't want to interject or cut anyone off. So what I ask is, if the timer goes off, you take that as an indication to wrap up your comments very quickly. Otherwise, I will have to cut you off and end the testimony once the timer goes off. I'm not directing that at you. I'm directing that at everyone. And so we'll put the timer up, and then I'll make it so it's kind of visible so you can see what your time is. And then, oh, you have a stand? Even better. Okay. All right. So I don't think putting your address and your name on the record should count as your 3 minutes. So go ahead and state your name and put on the record your address, and then I will hit your timer.
My name is Gary Mitchell. I live at 13350 Southwest King Lear Way, King City, Oregon.
Thank you.
First, I'd like to thank Councilor Shauna Thompson for standing up to the citizens of King City. You voted no on the TSP to protect the citizens of King City from increased regional traffic, decreased property values, increased noise and pollution from decreased safety. Now, regarding the Kingston Terrace Master Plan, I previously testified my opposition to changing the existing King City Comprehensive Code that protects residents from cut-through regional traffic. The TSP street network proposes crosses riparian Class 1 ravines at 9 locations. It is an idealistic 2-dimensional street network. These ravines are 3-dimensional, not 2-dimensional. 6 of the ravine crossings are significant and will require major bridges to be constructed. One of those ravines is the protected Bankston Conservation Easement. Your first page shows the ravine cross-section at the easement. The ravine is 50 feet deep, the span's 425 feet. The scale size image of a 2-story house is shown just to provide you visual perspective of the size of this ravine. Your staff has previously suggested that a bottomless culvert could be used at this crossing, but it's actually not very feasible. Next page shows a concept plan for a 425-foot long major bridge crossing the 50-foot deep ravine. This is a typical design concept just for illustration purposes. The term major bridge is applied when the span is 100 to 400 feet. The bridge width is expected to be about 32 feet for 2 lanes. The next page shows a photo of a bridge that was built in Highland Park, Illinois in 2019. It's called the Forest Avenue Bridge. Its length is 260 feet, height is 33 feet, width 33 feet. The next page shows a photo taken during construction of that Forest Avenue Bridge. The construction impact of building a major bridge across the ravine is significantly larger than the footprint of the bridge. Constructing a major bridge across the easement will wipe out several mature trees and significant established vegetation needed for soil stability. There will be permanent impairment to wildlife habitat due to 24-hour traffic noise and pollution. The damage to the easement cannot be mitigated by merely replanting trees and vegetation. Others have testified that state and federal approval is difficult and doubtful. Without this bridge, the proposed KTMP East-West Transportation System Plan fails. To success, avoid that easement. There's an alternative east-west route. Thank you for listening.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mitchell. All right, next up, please. Thank you. So again, go ahead and state your name and the record, and then I'll start your 3 minutes.
I'm Black, 13960 Southwest River Lane.
Yep.
Have you ever been in a natural area in the middle of a city and thought, thank goodness for the foresight of planners to protect it? When thought of the Central Park in New York City. You have a chance at this moment in time to make the same kind of decision to protect the area along the Carlson River in Kingston, Terrace. Yes, I live in Rivermead, but long ago I abandoned any effort to prevent Fisher Road connections and additional roads in my neighborhood. I don't like the effect that these roads will have on my neighborhood, but I accept it's the inevitable result of development. My efforts have been to protect the Carlson River and the related wildlife habitat through defending the bank and conservation easement. Some of your comments at City Council last week reflected your belief that the consultants were neutral in their conclusions. There is a difference between gathering the data and interpreting it. Just as I have bias toward interpreting the data, the information as being able to support an east-westward road further north, please consider that city staff has a similar bias toward supporting the east-west road through the conservation easement. That alignment has apparently been planned since King City decided to expand its boundaries. I do not suggest there's anything wrong or nefarious about that. I just said it was a conclusion that was reached a long time ago as the best option. Commissioner Casanova at the March public hearing said regarding the alternatives analysis, we can make it go however you like. I imagine you have all worked with consultants and understand this to be true. There are 2 examples of possible bias in city staff and consultants for supporting the Fisher Road extension through the easement and presenting the information. Number 1, staff findings submitted to show compliance with the metro condition number 8 states that alternative 2 has the particular advantage of potential future regional transit service when densities are sufficient. However, the alternatives analysis has the following statement regarding transit. It is unlikely that any of the alternatives would serve future transit. Consultants are using an argument that does not exist according to their own analysis to support alternative 2. For my questions response to emails submitted to public testimony, he states, unfortunately, in this instance, the least detriment is a dead-end road being used. The alternative is to condemn houses for housing complexes and dehome a number of people. Our staff and consultants felt the demise of a dead-end road was the least impactful. My response, they characterize the location of a road through an area protected by a conservation easement that has significant regional environmental value as the demise of a dead-end road, and say that the only alternative is condemning houses or housing complexes. And I just request to consider the north.
Thank you. Apologies. Okay. Jeez. All right. Great. Next up. Okay. Again, go ahead and state your name and record, and then I will start the timer. And we'll make it visible. And we will, for both Councilor Ocholi, who is on Zoom, and also for Councilor Paulson, we will make sure that they receive their copies of all the written materials today.
My name is Greg Russell. I'm at 14100 Southwest River Lane. And according to the Kingston Terrace Master Plan dated January 3rd, 2023, 1 community park, 3 neighborhood parks, Big Bend, Central, and Roy Rogers, and an urban park will be developed. As per the plan, the community park would be 3 acres per 1,000 people. Each neighborhood park would be 1.5 acres per 1,000 people. The urban park would be located in a high-density commercial area, most likely in the town center or public square. The plan states that the size of the parks will be based upon the population density in the rural, central, Deep Bend, and Main Street neighborhoods, and not based upon the total population in the urban growth boundary. Based upon the expected building of 3,300 homes, anywhere from 2.5 to 3.1 people per household, that comes to an additional population of 8,000 to 10,000 residents and 318 acres of buildable land. Most residents living in this less than 1.5 square mile will be taking advantage of not only the neighborhood parks, but the larger community parks as well. Therefore, the size of the park should be based upon the total expected population and not on the density of the people in the local neighborhoods. For example, King City Community Park is used frequently by not only King City residents, but surrounding residents as well. The 17-acre park was designed specifically for 700 homes and 2,000 new residents. Therefore, the proposed new community park acreage should be based upon the total anticipated population and not on the local density. The updated King City plan is a basic wish list with standard definitions, photographs, and colored schematics of the various parks. There's no assigned acreage other than dots on the map, and no public input, no projected budgets for acquiring the land, planned facilities, or park maintenance, or even access to the Tualatin River. However, a community park with amenities to include facilities, playgrounds, basketball and tennis courts, picnic shelters, and restrooms be accommodated in a Class 1 riparian area with year-round wetlands and steep slopes. King City acknowledges having a $50 million shortfall in their budget for the next 20 years. The master plan needs to show clear separation of acreage between the wild scenic areas and parks in each of the neighborhoods. Each have a function and a purpose and should not be combined in a single collective category. I also mentioned about having community gardens within these areas. Anyway,
Go ahead, Martha.
about the community parks. Please look it up.
Thank you. All right, who would like to be next? I don't know if you guys can see this up there. There's a way to make it bigger.
I don't think.
I don't think so. This is hard.
It's too low at that angle, yeah.
Right.
Use the mic.
Do you have a copy for Council Thompson?
Oh, he gave the mic.
All right, and we're collecting some of them here, so let's make sure. I think, well, for Smart and for Councilor Thompson, or excuse me, Paulson.
Take a look at those later.
And this is for Smart.
Mike Meyer, 16950 Southwest Meyer Lane, Taggart, Oregon. I just have quick bullet points to go through. It's going to be a little choppy, but the NIMBYs are here, people with self-interests, the property owners with generational wealth, and people that have theirs. These are things that have been used to describe us by your previous mayor and by the council. That's what you've come away with, that you haven't been listening. We represent a lot of interests besides just our own. The conservation easement being a very large one, and transportation and how it's going to function in the future. We've been labeled the opposition. Now that you have a plan, you can probably legitimately say you have opposition. Before you didn't have a plan. So how you're able to label us as opposition, I didn't quite understand that. During the last hearing, council brought up 4 things. The plan benefits the most people for the detriment of the least people. Was that goal threatened by moving alternative number 2, 600 feet to the north? I don't think so. Still have 3,600 homes built, could still accomplish all the goals that King City is setting out for. But I've come to the realization that that roadway represents money and funding. and the ability to pay for these roadways by building a collector that is continuous from Ray Rogers Road to 99W. Avoid displacing the most marginalized and vulnerable community members. Mentioned multifamily housing and a mobile home park. Well, mobile home park isn't part of your TSP, so how were mobile home park residents going to be displaced? And the concept of condemning over 2 miles of Beef Bend Road is a fallacy, because there are many examples of 3-lane roads in our area, or even 2-lane roads that function properly. Durham Road, McDonald, Hall. Many examples of roads that are able to move the traffic, but the intersections have been improved to make sure that that traffic gets dispersed. So this whole concept of relieving the burden on Beef Bend Road in exchange for not paying attention to the impact it's going to be caused to Fisher Road, I don't quite understand that and why you are focusing on a county road when you're not focusing on a roadway with regional significance. It's going to go through the heart of your community. I earlier provided 9 pages of information on the consultants' reports that I'd like you to go back and take a look at. Just one more thing. Statements, notifications, declarations, and actions regarding ex parte, conflict of interest, raise it or waive it, have been all on the report.
Thank you. Next up. Go ahead and state your name and then we'll start the timer.
Hello, my name is Dave Robinson. I'm a resident of Rivermead. Thank you all for being here.
Please state your address.
14180 Southwest River Lane. I have a few things. First of all, my home is in a variance. It was built in 1962, too close to the road River Lane. So just so that you know, a 50-foot right of way would condemn my home for destruction. In March, I was emailing with Mr. Faust and Mr. Weston to seek details on east-west alternatives and how alternative number 2 rose to the top. I sought raw data and weighting factors that would imply that one rose above alternatives 3, 4, and then 5. Initially, I was told that that data was proprietary. And then I was told that those alternatives were not given specific weighting factors and that they were qualitative in nature, that there was some quantitative analysis. I asked for the raw data that would inform a quantitative analysis, and that was not provided. So, for the record, I'll read a bit here. Mr. Faust stated, factors established in the east-west circulation alternative analysis were not weighted. The evaluation process was largely based on qualitative order of magnitude comparisons, which, quote, precise results are less important than differences among the alternatives. Absolute numbers from a quantitative evaluation or the more general qualitative assessments are less important. Determination of rankings is based on quantitative analysis data where available. So I don't see any quantitative analysis that says alternative 2 is better than alternative 4. And then the quote I gave you already that, and this is on the record, only one copy. I apologize. I will send an electronic copy for all to read. I wanted mainly to get this on the record. Mayor Fender mentioned it. Say it now or lose your case, right? That's why I drove over here. Second topic. So I will leave that for all of you to read. It's a complete email. correspondence between myself, Mr. Faust, and Mr. West. I encourage you to read it. It starts with my inquisition about how did alternative two, how did that get to the top of the list? Other than a two-dimensional view, which Ms. Sylvester said that's how that was planned. She said it doesn't really make sense. Second thing, I asked about circumvention of environmentally sensitive areas. Quote, the city does not intend to circumvent the protection of environmentally sensitive riparian land. As we have stated in the master plan in several meetings, we will protect riparian land and upland habitat in accordance with Title 13 regulations. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up.
Can you read it?
Go ahead.
Really short and sweet.
State your name and address, and then I'll start the timer.
Debbie Walk, 14120 Southwest River Lane. And as we know, I'm in opposition to the rest of the world about the Fisher Road extension. It'd be nice to be able to celebrate, because it does, parts of it look pretty good, your plan. But, you know, about the Fisher Lane. And I just wanted to point out, because Peter Watson asked at one point about about whether River Lane was retirees. He looked it up this morning, over 70%. We have about 7 people in our neighborhood that work outside of the neighborhood. And so it makes us vulnerable, I believe was his words, one of the vulnerable communities. We're on a fixed income. And I think the last thing is our septic tanks. They're fine. I swear to God, they're fine. We all take care of them. Sand filtration people have them changed twice a year. And the new houses that are going in, as we die off, the big houses going in are fabulous. I mean, the younger people are coming in building these street of dream homes. And it's great because it's one home on one lot, protects the river, protects the environment. And I think you should keep it. I think you should keep your street of dreams. So, you know, King City can have Street of Dreams, it can have the Conservancy, it can have all the new stuff, and still maintain some real character. The small communities, the small sections you have in King City are fabulous. You've got the family section, the people who don't like yard work section, you have the golfers, you have the retirees, you have El Dorado. And it maintains property value for all of them. And so you throw the natural, the gardeners, and the farmers. I mean, we have horses and donkeys, chickens and pheasants and turkeys, and the otter and the beaver, and it's just, you don't know River Lane if you haven't lived there. And there's a lot more to it than just standing here saying no.
Okay, thank you. All right, next up. Yeah, I'll leave a copy for.
One map. that for reference when we talk.
Oh, yeah, that's cool. I got it.
All right. State your name and address for the record, and then I'll start the timer.
Okay. I'm Dean Blair, 13960 Southwest River Lane. Earlier testimony said that you want to do what is best for the entire community. I absolutely agree. I support 90% of the work you guys have done. It's really good. I just want to give you kind of a concept thing of the Fisher Road extension through the Bankston easement, which I'm not with. So, in summary, please protect the recreational experience of people who will use the King City parks and trails. Think of the people using the trails, the paddlers using the river, the people using the parks. Consider the effect of the experience of a nearby road that has more traffic than is currently on Fisher Road east of 131st. So, protecting the recreational value of parks, trails, and the river is a huge benefit for a large number of people now and for whatever, into the future. And so running the road through what I just saw as the designated recreation and open space is what I'm talking about. So I support the parks and trails in the master plan, the improvement of the river access at the current King City Park. I love paddling on the river without the presence of significant traffic noise and with the chance of seeing wildlife. When I visited Cook Park last week, you're all familiar with it. Picture, so what the map shows you is the current is the Fisher Road alignment put at the same distance from the river. So put yourself in that Cook Park environment with a major road going through the butterfly garden, the soccer fields, and being right there, if I actually drew it to match river, it would cut into the playground area. So it's a completely different experience than what you have Cook Park separated from Durham Road. Kind of a local to King City Park. I just don't have a map of that. The same concept there. It would go through the soccer field, through the gazebo, through the kids' play area, and then curve up along the power line. So having that road there makes a completely different park experience. So anyhow, blah, 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 blah. Projected daily volumes for the east-west collector is 8,600 per day. Currently Fisher Road is 7,000 per day. So I ask you to think of the effect of having the road through the easement in the park as far as your best experience for all people. So I beat my time.
Thank you. All right, next up. Don't be shy, let's go. Are we done? Is there anyone else who wants to make comment here in person? All right, hearing none, we will move on to those on Zoom. So Ronnie, is there anyone on Zoom who wish to make statements in opposition?
First up will be Tom.
Okay. And then Ronnie, can you, well, I guess I will do so let's put Tom up. We'll have Tom, when you are on our screen, we'll have you state your name and your address. We won't be able to have a timer visible to you, I don't believe, but I will have a timer here. And if you wish, I can give you a 30-second warning if that is helpful to you. If not, you can just monitor the time yourself. Yeah, if you can put. So bear with us, everyone, as we work through our technical issues.
Go to gallery view.
They're not analysts.
You do layout.
Yeah, maybe.
For the,
Oh, that's just gallery view, Ronnie.
and I guess if they don't want to be on video, it doesn't really matter.
Okay.
So I guess that would be the.
All right. So, you ready? Okay. Please state your name and your address for the record, and then I will start your 3 minutes.
Who's going?
There you go.
You are, sir.
Okay, this is Tom Stiebolt, and my address is 3816 Northeast Gleason in Portland, Oregon. And I'm representing the board of the Friends of the Tualatin River National Wildlife Refuge Complex. I submitted comments last week, so I have current comments, and I also resubmitted our February 7th comments, which somehow had disappeared in the interim. And the bottom line is, and I served on the Stakeholder Advisory Committee for several years. And I am supportive of the western portion of the plan. Our group is. Our concern, as many of the people have expressed, is the portion going through the Bankston easement, which is going to interfere with existing wildlife and also existing fauna. Construction is going to risk damage to the Tualatin River. The existence of the road there is going to create noise and again disturb wildlife. So our request is that you move that portion farther north to one of the other three suggested routes. And that really is the extent of my comments in addition to our submitted comments. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, others on Zoom who wish to provide testimony?
Yeah, next I have Victoria.
All right, next, and Victoria, please state your name and address for the record, and then I will start your 3 minutes. Would you like, I can give you a 30-second warning if you wish, since you can't see the timer, but.
Sure, that'd be great. I can see you, so if you raise your hand thing when it's 30 seconds.
I would. Perfect. All right. If you can state your name and address for the record, and then I'll start the timer.
Awesome. Good morning, Mayor Fender and City Council. My name is Victoria Frankney, Riverkeeper and Staff Attorney with Tualatin Riverkeepers. Our office is located at 11675 Southwest Hazelbrook Road in Tualatin. You've heard and read testimony from myself and other Tualatin Riverkeeper staff throughout the years, specifically concerning our strong opposition to the Fisher Road extension and encouragement to minimize stream crossings to the maximum extent practicable. Our comments on those issues still stand. My comments today are in support of strong protections of natural resources in the area, which the master plan does allude to. Since the TSP has been adopted, it is important that the city accounts for the increased stormwater and pollutant load anticipated by the road crossings proposed in this plan. Strong riparian areas and green neighborhood buffers will help create a community cohesive with the area around it. We also ask that the city prioritize preserving existing natural resources, as it provides a greater net benefit than recreating these natural areas. Though we do recognize that some streams and wetlands will need human involvement due to severe degradation from decades-long stormwater damage. The Kingston Terrace area is tricky. It poses landslide and flood risks. Preserving existing riparian areas will help mitigate these impacts from these natural hazards. Also, avoiding development within these areas and enforcing strong setbacks will also mitigate impacts. Lastly, in regard to mobility, please avoid roundabouts in close proximity to the streams in that area. This requires more space than a simple four-way intersection and could further stress these sensitive areas. For roundabouts proposed in the least impactful areas, including green infrastructure, can make a huge difference in mitigating pollutant runoff from these busy roads. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you very much. I didn't need to give you any warning for your, so appreciate that. Anyone else on Zoom?
Yeah.
All right.
Next will be Don Mobley.
All right, Don Mobley, please state your name and address for the record, and then I will start the timer. Would you like I will raise my hand, if I don't interrupt you, but I will raise my arm at the 30-second to give you a 30-second warning. All right?
Certainly. Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Dawn Mobley. I live at 17030 Southwest 137th here in Rivermead community. I do oppose the master plan. I oppose this plan because it disregards what the existing community residents have requested, and it also disregards residents like myself in the affected area. And also like myself, I am third generation here. So there are a lot of founding families that are part of this that are going to be eliminated if this plan goes through. The Rivermead community was built as a cul-de-sac neighborhood. This style no longer fits the needs for King City and their connective concept. So therefore, they would like to break our community up by putting several roads in, not just the connective road. This disregard for environment, traffic, and safety issues are all part of why I oppose this. I oppose a roundabout. Roundabouts in general, some are, some do make sense, but the roundabout in particular that will be placed on my property, as it looks from the maps, is only about a block from the original or from the roundabout that is in Edgewater, which seems repetitive to be that close. And also other roundabouts along the map do show to be very close to one another, which just seems to make me dizzy, quite honestly. I also have concern for parking in general throughout the entire plan, especially for these high density multifamily homes. If you look around what King City is already allowed to happen in their realm, shows that there's plenty of roads that you can't even drive on because there's parking on both sides. So now it's just a 1-lane road. There are also plenty of apartment buildings in which do not allow for enough parking. Therefore, there's several areas along the street that now have parking, which 20 years ago did not. So a very large concern for that going forward. Also the environment and the Baxton easement. The option of the road is not my favorite. I don't like any roads, but along the river, I most definitely am opposed of. Also, very lastly, the cul-de-sac, traffic issues, just with the collector road in the community can be solved by just increasing Beef Bend and using Beef Bend to its maximum ability, as the other gentleman spoke to earlier in regards to double lanes like Hall and McDonald. There's a lot that can be done on Beef Bend to make that accessible for us and for this community growth. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mike, can you take over from Ronnie, please? Oh, Ronnie's back. All right, and we're going to have, we have one further. Also, I saw Councilor Acholi's hand raised quickly and then go back down. Councilor Acholi, did you need to interject or say anything? Oh, okay. We'll work on that. Who is up next for, okay. Ken Dawson, you are next. If you can please state your name and your address for the record, I will start the timer. And when we hit 30 seconds, I will raise my arm to indicate to you you have 30 seconds left.
All right. Well, good morning. My name is Ken Dobson. I'm an attorney. My office address is 324 South Abernathy Street in Portland, Oregon, 97239. And I've been retained by Mike Meyer to take a look at some of the issues involved with the annexation area, in particular the master plan, proposed master plan. And I've identified some areas where the master plan and supporting findings are legally deficient. I submitted some testimony yesterday, written testimony, that goes into it in more detail, but I'll just quickly go over the main points. First of all, we take issue with the staff's finding that the master plan is in compliance with Goal 5. The number of problems with it. One, there's an over-reliance on Metro Title 13 program, which only applies to regionally significant resources. And that's different than locally significant resources, such as the local wetlands inventory or the SNRs that have been identified in the annexation area by Washington County. These are not regionally significant resources, and Metro Title 13 does not apply to these. So moving forward, I mean, really, we need a Goal 5 analysis of these regionally, or excuse me, locally significant resources. That was not done. So I think that shows a lack of compliance with Goal 5 right there. Also, opening this area to the development as proposed in the master plan will create new conflicting uses, which will require a new ESEE analysis. Just so you know, LUBA recently found that Washington County had erred in attempting to adopt new Goal 5 rules where it allowed new conflicting uses, and the county had not yet performed a new ESEE conflicts analysis. So that needs to be done before approving the master plan. Also, it'd be great to see the language of the proposed Goal 5 rules before finding compliance with Goal 5 on the master plan. This is especially true concerning recent changes to state law, in particular Senate Bill 1051, which has really tightened up the clear and objective requirements of the needed housing statute as it relates to areas that contain Goal 5 resources. And I noticed in the findings, staff says, well, we're going to use Model Metro Ordinance in developing our Goal 5 program. That's going to be problematic because I looked at the Metro Ordinance and it has some provisions in there that are nearly identical to certain Washington County Goal 5 rules that were invalidated after the passage of Senate Bill 1051 in 2017. So before we say, hey, the master plan complies with Goal 5, we really need to see the actual Goal 5 rules to go over them and make sure that they are tight and clean and objective and will pass muster, especially in a post Senate Bill 1051 world. So that's Goal 5. We also found that a lack of compliance with Comprehensive Plan Policy 5, especially policy number 2, which requires the city to protect certain natural resources to the maximum extent possible. Now that's important language there, because maximum extent possible is different than maximum extent practicable, which seemed to be the standard that staff was using in determining compliance with Goal 5. I hear the buzzer. So again, I've put all this into my written submissions. Another issue I just want to raise real quickly is that there is an airstrip that is registered with the Oregon Department of Aviation out there that triggered a whole slew of requirements under ORS 836.600 at sequence, and they're implementing regulations. These aren't addressed anywhere in the master plan. To comply with Oregon law, you need to address it. So master plan needs some more work to come into compliance with Goal 5, comprehensive plan, and the state aviation regulations. But thank you for your attention, and do read my written submissions.
Thank you, sir. Ronnie, do we have any others on the line who wish to testify in opposition?
Everybody on my list has gone through, Madam Mayor.
All right, this is going to be the last call for any testimony regarding opposition to the plan. I'll give one last shout out here in the room, since there's several individuals here who have not come up to the podium. I'm not suggesting you have to. I just want to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to be heard if they so wish. Anyone on Zoom, this is also your last opportunity to place statements on the record. Please indicate. We will give it 10 seconds. Hearing none, we will move forward. Does staff have any rebuttal?
Let's start with Steve, because I think there's some items that he can just really address real quick in response to the latest one that we got from Mr. Dobson, and then I'll hand it to Mr. Watts to address.
And 4 items that I'd like to touch on. First is some commentary about parks acreage. On page 30 of the master plan, there's a table that shows estimated park acreage per 1,000 residents. As Ms. McInerney presented, the plan calls for at least 5 and really closer to 10 acres of parks land, that's not, open space designation, parks land per 1,000 residents. And in terms of, the cost of park facilities and funds to build those, that is included in the infrastructure funding chapter of the master plan. Secondly, there was some commentary about the alternatives analysis. I think the statements were correct in that the analysis was conducted to compare the different alternatives to each other. It includes both qualitative and quantitative data. There's a significant amount of quantitative data in that report and its appendices. And I just wanted to maybe give Ann Sylvester a moment to comment on the nature of analysis. Oh, the comment was also correct that there was not a weighting of the many factors. They were scored one by one, but I wanted to give Ann Sylvester, Ronnie, if you could give Ann the ability to speak, see if she wants to say anything about that analysis or any of the other comments we heard about transportation loads, Deep Bend Road or Southwest Fisher Road.
Yes, there is actually a lot of quantitative information in there. One of the most significant efforts was to do travel demand forecasting based on expected population growth in the area and the larger communities surrounding the area, which we took and then did intersection operations analysis. All of that's very quantitative, came up with level of service results, seconds of delay for key intersections that we studied in the largest study area for each of the alternatives. We also did some travel time comparisons from a variety of point A's and point B's through the community to look at what the travel time differences would be primarily for walking and biking. There's specific information relating to how we would address some of the ordinance requirements, looking at the issues related to limitations on cul-de-sacs or closed-end streets, looking at spacing standards on Deep Bend Road, to the extent to which that's quantitative. You know, we did consider all of that very specific information. There's also fairly detailed cost estimates. The list kind of goes on. Steve is right in saying that this is not an environmental document. We don't have a specific proposed development or a specific road that we're evaluating. So it's a very high level analysis. A lot of the analysis is quantitative because of that nature, but the extent to which we were able to do quantitative information, we have done so. That's all I have to say.
Steve, we have a request for a bio break. Is this an okay place to take a break and then we will resume with your additional points? So we are going to take a recess for 5 minutes to allow to stretch our legs and go to the restroom, get a drink of water, and we'll resume in 5 minutes. Let me get my phone out. All right, it is now 1:01. I officially call the meeting back to order, and we are here to consider ordinance, two ordinances. An ordinance considering the land use file 2023-02, the Kingston Terrace Master Plan, and ordinance 2023-3, an ordinance considering land use file 23-3, amending the King City Comprehensive Plan to support the Kingston Terrace Master Plan. I call the meeting back to order after a short recess. All right, so handing over back to staff for after recess to I hand it back over to you.
So I'll just continue off from where we had left off. We were discussing the road right away going beyond Mr. Robinson's property based on, and I'll just say our best interpretation of the data that we have is that wherever we put that road, it will not impact his residence. It will have an impact, but it won't cause the home to be raised to the ground or anything.
It will not hit the structure.
It should not hit the structure, based on the information that we have present. There's also a question that was presented prior to the break, asking about the location of the road. And I will say that the image that you see with the background, with the backbone maps and in our transfer system are exactly that. They're images cast on a satellite picture, and those roads have not been surveyed or detailed in a plat to place the exact location of them. What we note is that certain elements of the backbone street have to hit certain locations, and that there's some flexibility there. And our understanding is that there are three roads that have to be within 100 feet, and those are Beef Bend, Roy Rogers, and Elsner, and 150th can all move by 100 linear feet. And all the others can move up to 200 linear feet in any given direction to comply with the regulation plan for the backbone streets and the transportation. So that should provide the flexibility and address some of the concerns from Mr. Robinson, Mr. Meyer, and others that see maybe there's a roundabout nearer on their particular property or near their residence that they might be concerned about. There is some flexibility built in to allow the mobilization of that road to a certain degree. We have done our best to find the path that would have the least detriment to those home sites, and hopefully would not end up in a result that would de-home anybody. And that was our intention. That remains our intention. Other than that, we received some information regarding a request for airport findings. You'll need to prepare those airport findings as a function of the final adoption packet for the Kingston Terrace master plan, and potentially apply a airport overlay on the slight strip there on our property if that is necessary. We still have some legal background that we need to check through to ensure that is what we really need to do to satisfy that. The other final element was that there were some items brought up in the Meyer testimony regarding some comp plan amendment for the West King City. While our plan addresses those roads and talks about redefining those roads, we would still need to crosswalk that with the existing one and address those differences. And so we'll have to do that before the final adoption packet. So I think that addresses the points that we saw in the findings that were new, that brought up new information or new areas for review that had not been addressed previously in our findings. A lot of the 215 pages that was submitted by Mr. Dobson was information that we'd already received through Wendy Kellington and Clemlow Engineering, and we had already addressed most of those items. So we really only have the three primary items that we need to move forward to prepare findings for.
And our work with Metro on the Goal 13 has been ongoing. We will want to inform Tigard of the airport issues because I don't know what, if any, would have on them, but so there'll be some emails that will send, but. Yeah.
Any telephone calls or emails that you need to put into the record regarding Mr. Robinson? We were in a precarious, these are always difficult when you're talking about a private individual, but in a public setting, that's always hard. It creates all sorts of issues, but is there anything in follow-up that we need to address there?
No, I mean, as a general rule, county would never allow a structure to be built in the public right-of-way. So again, without making any warranties or representation, it's very unlikely that any portion of the structure would already exist. And then, as Mike said, for areas where there might be a road in the future, but there's not an existing right-of-way, we have 200 feet of latitude and avoid structures or, to make sure it's the most efficient.
So we still technically have the public testimony open. You could offer for anyone that hasn't used their 3 minutes online, if they'd like to chime in before we consider any further action, or we can continue having the discussion.
Ronnie, I think Shauna might have jumped on if you want to promote her.
Yeah, she's on the attendees list. Did you want to afford anyone that has not already spoken the opportunity to speak then?
All right. Everyone, so if there's,
I don't know if they can hear me.
Oh.
all right, so there's been a suggestion that if anyone wants to make additional public testimony before we close the public testimony portion of the hearing today, to go ahead and indicate, we would provide you.
Anyone that hasn't already.
Oh, I apologize. Yes, to be clear, if there's anyone who has not testified already who would like to have an opportunity to testify, please indicate now before we close the public testimony portion of the public hearing. And then,
Anyone online?
is there anyone online? Okay. As a point of order, I do have additional questions, however, but we can continue our discussion. Right, we have established that we can continue with questions. We just can close our public testimony portion, and
I see no raise.
I see none. So there is no further testimony or no further individuals who wish to testify at this hearing today. With that, I will receive a motion.
I move to close public testimony for
Okay.
Ordinance 2023-02 and 2023-03.
The second?
Second.
All right, it's been moved and approved. We'll take a roll call.
I have a motion, and can I get the second on?
The second was,
And we previously discussed that we were going to allow the agencies that have been mentioned in some of these writings opportunity to submit materials if they want.
should we amend the motion?
I think that's implicit in everything, but if you want to amend the motion to specifically say.
I'll amend my motion to include consideration for additional information presented by government agencies into the public record.
Particularly to address the ODFW letter that was received.
Yes. We're awaiting communication from ODFW.
So other than potential response from ODFW, the motion is to close public testimony with the exception of a potential agency comments from Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife and other agencies.
Another agency, related to the, right. All right, let's restate it one last time.
Right now, I have a motion to close the public testimony with the exception of the public agency comments. Official public agency comments.
Dr. Petrie, do you still second?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so.
Second in place.
All right, so we've had a amended motion that's been seconded, and we'll take a roll call vote.
Councilor Petrie,
Yes.
Councilor Moore,
Yes.
Councilor Manella,
Yes.
Councilor Thompson, you just muted yourself.
You just muted yourself, Shauna.
Oh, you didn't hear me say yes? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
I said yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
And then, Counselor Ocholi?
Yes.
Mayor Fender?
Yeah.
At this time, based on a 6-0 vote, public testimony on the Kingston Terrace Master Plan is closed with the exception of public agency comment. And we want to set a date on that because we would need it before July.
We want to this a week before the hearing.
Yeah, so, the Friday before the hearing is July 7th, and that's what I told Mr. Amella at OESW, so I would need it by that point in time. So it's July 7th and an acceptable date or deadline for comments from public agency.
Yeah.
Yes.
Do we need to amend our motion further to include a, okay,
All right.
okay.
So needs to be received by July 7th, 2023.
All right, so the public testimony portion of the public hearing for ordinance 2023-2 and 2023-3 is now closed on this date of June 21, 2023 at 1:09 p.m. Excuse me, at 1:14 p.m. But for comments from the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife and other state agencies in relation to the letter previously submitted, they are required to provide any additional commentary by July 7th, 2023. The public testimony is now closed. All right. Moving back to council discussion and questions. Do we have additional questions and points of discussion for city staff and experts?
I did have a few questions that actually have already been answered in your rebuttals. And those were about the airport and the alternative analysis data. There was an acronym in there that I hadn't seen before that I don't know what it means, and that was REET. What is REET revenue? And I don't know.
The funding portion.
Yeah, and I'm just curious. I don't know what that is, so I'd love to know.
Let me figure that out for you.
Thank you.
What was the acronym REET?
Yeah.
2 E's?
Yeah, REET. It was right after the MSTIP funds and
Probably real estate excise tax.
there we go.
Yeah.
That fits.
Yeah.
Thank you, that makes a lot of sense. I just had never seen that before, so I was like, where is that coming from?
Washington County is the only county that has it.
Oh, well, there we go. Okay. Other than that, most of my concerns, you know, as we're moving forward and reviewing specific plans for particular areas, I have lots of questions and thoughts and feelings and advocacy about that. But those are conversations for when we get into the more granular details. So, thank you.
Councilor Petrie, Councilor Manilis, questions or comments, discussion points?
I don't really have any questions, but there's a lot of information for us to continue to take in and go over and repeat, and we may have more questions before we actually adopt this or vote to adopt. But at this point, I think I'm good.
I think you talk about a overlay, like over the Meyer airstrip. What is that? Just more of a calling out, you know, this is an airstrip, or is it having to dive into zoning? I mean, what's an overlay?
Well, again, part of Part of this is because I received this, I think it was before 5, but it was close to the end of the day. And so I had a little bit of time to go through the statutes related to, there's special rules for airports that, you know, specifically stated that airports provide a very important transportation option and are an important part of the transportation system. So again, my off-the-cuff reading about those special rules and when you have to put them in place is it's there for public airports and then privately owned public airports. So that would be one individual owns the airstrip and in some instances they own the hangars as well, and people rent the hangars. But there are other property owners that may live immediately adjacent to the airport and lease the airport. And again, for just 3 specific of all those private/public airports, if you check one of 3 boxes, then you go into that special regulatory scheme. So looking at the evidence that Mr. Dobson submitted, the appendix is for a privately owned private use airport, and then that listed in that list of privately owned private use airports is Myers Riverside, Washington County, and then the city listed as Tiger. So I do not believe that fits into that regulatory scheme. I affirmatively asked Mr. Dobson via email yesterday afternoon if he was making a representation that this airstrip fits in the scheme. I think in order to be eligible, you have to, and again, I don't want to speculate too much, but this is my understanding, it has to be a paved airstrip. And I don't think that this is a paved airstrip. So based on everything that I have seen, I do not believe that this is applicable. With that said, airstrip use may be pre-existing non-conforming use. And so in the event that Mr. Meyer wants to put, wants the city to come up with like an airport overlay or something like that, I'm not going to say that we're not going to do it because, again, the idea is safety. And so we want to make sure whoever's using that airstrip is safe and that members of the general public are safe. So that was the second question that I asked Mr. Dobson is Mr. Meyer looking for some sort of overlay that would, protect and keep his pre-existing non-conforming use safe? And I haven't checked my email since before we took our break, but I had not received a response from Mr. Dobson, and I didn't feel that it would be fair for me to ask him during his public comment because my guess is he hadn't had a chance to confer with his client. So, but he's got my email address, and I'm sure at some point he'll answer those questions, and then based on that, and we'll do a little more research. And if he wants us to come up with something, and we need to, we'll need to comply with state law, and looking through the lens that we always look through, which is health and safety. So this is why we really want the communications a week before the hearing, because then I think I'd have a lot more answers for you.
Well, and my follow-up is probably you don't have information on it. In the amount of time you've had to review some of the statutes, does any of the specify how much traffic an airport gets to be able to even be come into consideration, or does it just have to have that designation?
So the Oregon administrative rules about airports are a bit ambiguous in that it seems when they define airport to say to be a strip of land you land planes on. But in other Oregon administrative rules, they describe those as airs. There's a distinction between an airstrip and an airport. At least in 1994 when they did the assessment, this was a privately owned, private use airports. In the letter that he sent, he referred to it as I believe, airstrip.
Yeah, I think.
Former Senator Johnson says there's these, I guess, slides that are called Seattle slides that mark every airstrip in every airport. I don't know why they're called Seattle slides, but anyway, that may allow us to verify the exact status of it and what the uses are, and then I don't know how much. I mean, I don't know how many planes are landing on it or any of that information. Those might impact what we would recommend as far as overlay.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
We're just missing a lot of info.
Sure. That's all I have for now.
So there was an objection that was made online to us what was referred to as we've selectively closed the record. I think what we were, given that, and again, at the risk of people being very upset with me, we did not have ODF&W had not informed us. They had not instructed us to put their letter in the record. So we had said, if you want the letter in the record, you have to tell us. They hadn't told us that. And so we weren't going to put the letter in the record. They sent the communication they sent this morning. Other people now will put that letter in the record. And so we would want to give ODF&W a chance to rebut that. If they want to take that opportunity, they don't have to. The Metro Goal 513 stuff, again, that I forwarded that to Roger Alford at Metro as soon as I received it. That was the first email, was to click forward and send it. But they obviously haven't had a chance to rebut anything in that letter. And then also implicated is the Oregon Department of Aviation. And I don't know whether they would want to provide any clarity or put any information in the record, but at the very least, I would want to give those three impacted agencies the opportunity. So because this was evidence that was received into the record after the deadline, and because they hadn't previously been provided that opportunity, my recommendation would be that they do, to the extent that people want to make a record objection about that. I mean, this is a legislative land use thing, so kind of anything in the known universe could be in the record, but we would just ask that people stick to the criteria if they can. I don't know where any sort of objection to this sort of thing would go. It's something that I see happen all the time in the ordinary course. Is if you put a state agency stuff into the record, give them a chance to rebut, but I don't know. I guess reasonable minds can differ.
I think it's highly appropriate to provide the agencies who have not had an opportunity to submit the material they themselves want to submit. We are giving them an opportunity to submit either rebuttal information or additional commentary. We are not limiting the agency's submittal. We are simply closing the record to anyone else because, as we've seen here today, there is no one left in this room or online who wish to provide public testimony. And we have given ample opportunity today, again and again, to anyone who would like to submit testimony on the record. And I think it's very appropriate that agencies have that same right. This was a very unusual and perplexing situation. And I think that we have taken appropriate action to address it. That's my 2 cents. If anyone else has a difference of opinion here, then please, comment. But I think that what we have done is transparent and reasonable given the circumstances. All right. Shauna and Councilor Thompson and Councilor Acholi, I just want to make sure that you are also given the opportunity to speak. So if you have anything additional to state regarding this, please raise your hand or just take yourself on mute. All right. Councilman Ellis, other questions or comments?
Nope, I'm good for right now. Okay.
Councilor Thompson, Councilor Acholi, do you have any questions for staff at this time? Any discussion points or want to make any statements?
Jamie and the other council members, this is Smart. No, I do not have anything right now. Thank you.
Thanks, Councilor Acholi. And I saw Shauna affirmatively shake her head that she did not have any comments. If I've misunderstood that, Councilor Thompson, let me know. But I was watching your little Zoom square. So I have a couple questions. So I just want to go back to the submission. We got some written testimony from Janet Black, and she has spoken about the east-west circulation alternative analysis and her statement that so on my copy of this document, I will just raise it so everyone can see that what I'm talking about. On the second page of her testimony, she's highlighted that staff said it is unlikely that any of the alternatives will serve future transit. Steve, can you or Ann, I don't believe she's still on here, but could you maybe comment to that discussion point and what? Yeah, thank you.
I think I'd like to ask Ann Sylvester to respond to that. If you could, Ann. And Ronnie, yeah.
Sure. As I understood it, the comment related to about regional transit passing through this area. And we had conversations with TriMet about serving the area, and they had indicated an interest in staying on either Roy Rogers Road or Beef Bend Road, but that's their short-range plan. Transit agencies do 6-year transit development plans. If you start to look out in the longer term, there were opportunities for consideration potentially of having regional transit come through this area if there is the density of the commercial development, employment uses, residential density development, as opposed to the Beef Bend Road alternative. And that was really what we were speaking to. It's a longer term thing as density develops in this area. There is the potential for that, but not in the short term. The other thing that could happen would be some sort of local transit service similar to what's existing in the existing city, or like what other cities like Forest Grove or Wilsonville or others have done to provide transit circulation, a local circulation option, and that would ideally go right through the development. So that was kind of the two aspects of transit we were looking at.
Thank you for that. I had written down, I'll just give it, does anyone have a follow-up question to, I don't want to cut anyone off, but I was going to move on. Okay.
I just
sure.
speak as well, as Ann was mentioning about potential for a localized transit system. Alternative 2 is one of the ones that was better suited to handle a localized transit system or a localized transit loop if we were doing a small autonomous shuttle that went from east to west, west to east. But it would use that Beef Bend to River Terrace, Fisher, to Queen Anne, up to 116th, back to Beef Bend, and then back down to River Terrace Boulevard. So it would run the loop. And that would actually provide a service, like quarter-mile service, of just about everywhere within King City. That was one of the considerations that we had from the very beginning.
I will also say, in full disclosure from our recent lobbying trip to DC, right? Looking at the metrics that transit uses on density and rapid transit and other transit, it's an extremely kind of difficult situation of a catch-22, right? That goes around and around, which is why we've seen for the last 25 years, all of us tearing our hair out about Highway 99. So for what it's worth, I just make those observations. All right. I have several other additional questions that you all have addressed. The last one pertains to the comments made by Gary Russell regarding parks, which I actually quite appreciate Mr. Russell's comments. I would love more parks. Can you walk us through the analysis between what he is talking about as far as providing parks based on projected population versus the metrics of perhaps, or walk us through kind of how we looked at that, and is there a discrepancy between the future population amount versus our, I mean, to me, what you presented, it clearly shows that we have a greater anticipated park ratio than other cities, and I quite like that. But I appreciate his comments about, right, if we're looking at density modeling for parks versus population or units of housing versus what the actual people populate, right? Like that's a different kind of metric. So
I can start to address Greg's comment. I just want to say that what Greg Russell, Mr. Russell submitted into, this is going to be talking about a ratio of park acreage to population numbers. So one of the things that we put into our concept plan was a ratio, and I can't remember the exact ratio, but I want to say it was half an acre to, so it's 1.5 acres. So there's a number of different ratios. There's a number of different ratios depending on the population. So there's pocket park, and you have 1/4 acre per 1,000. And then you have neighborhood park, which is half an acre per 1,000. And community park, 3 acres per 1,000. Linear park, 1.25 acres. Trail path, 1/4 mile per 1,000. And open space, 4 acres per 1,000. And so in our area, we have a projected population of approximately, we use the figure of 2.5 people per residential unit. If we have, per the metro condition, meets the 3,348 residential units that are in there, we break out my calculator, we would have, so you have 3,348 minimum unit times 2.5. That would give you a population of just that area of 8,370. So that's the estimated population based on the 3,300. And then we estimate that there's more like an average of, there's more like 3,600 units possible. Yeah. And so even with 3,600 units times the 2.5 number, we get 9,000 units, 9,000 people. So if you have your 9,000 people, and let's just use community park for instance, 9,000 people, we're doing 3 acres per 1,000, so you times that by 3, you get essentially 27 acres of land that would need to be set aside. And I believe if you look at our parks plan, we have 2 community parks. Those parks are 20 acres apiece. One is located in and around the Banks and Meyer waterfront area. The other is down on the other side near the O'Halloran property. We have a linear park identified in there. There's additionally 4 other smaller pocket parks that are based on those population numbers and the needs that we're projecting over there. You also have the linear park that goes up and down the Bonneville lines as well, and a potential riverfront trail if that ever comes to fruition. So throughout all of that, what we've identified is about 200 acres of natural areas. And also in addition to those natural areas, we have another 40 to 50 acres worth of parks programmed into our development area. So we feel that we've addressed the parks sufficiently in our parks master plan and what's in the plan currently. With that being said, I'll hand it off to Steve in case I'm missing anything related to parks and Mr. Russell's comments.
Yeah, I did have a chance to talk to Mr. Russell during the recess, and clarified for him exactly what Mike just walked you through. And I think his concern was that we were looking at population in these service area circles, when really it's overall population for the area, as Mike stated, 8,000 or 9,000, and then we apply the ratio of acres per 1,000 residents, which would be, 8 or 9, and multiply by the acreage. So I hope that answers your question.
It does. I appreciate that. Thank you. I think I have addressed all of the questions that I had. I certainly look forward to further information that you guys are going to work on regarding Title III, Goal 5, compliance with Senate Bill 1051, kind of wrapped all of, essentially I'm just going to put that under the umbrella of the Ken Dobson legal letter. Certainly further discussion about that is required. And then, let's see, and then of course the airport, which is kind of covered in there. So those are all the questions that I have at this time. As Councilor Petrie indicated, right, this is certainly a continued discussion and evaluation. This is I don't even think significant amount of information. It's a plethora. It's just a huge amount of information to synthesize and go through. And even though some of us have been working on it, right, for years and years and years, there's just a lot. So, Steve, I really appreciate the presentation today and the hard work that you and your team and the other consultants went through to prepare for today. And really this entire process, right? But I certainly appreciate that. And Mike, I certainly extend the same appreciation to you and your staff and to the counselors up here. So, and those who took time to testify today, this is a difficult process. There's just no way around it. It's just difficult for all involved. So I just want to acknowledge that. With that, do we have any other, I will hand it over to everyone else if there's any final comments. I guess I should hand to you guys. Is there any final rebuttal or information that at this time you want to provide us before we move forward?
I don't have anything else at this point in time other than what we've already submitted to the record and the items that we've already brought up that we'll need to be addressing over the next couple of weeks and have finalized for the council for consideration in July. So, and with that, I believe we've earmarked July 19th for the continuation of this public hearing.
Okay.
That was this evening.
All right. Okay. All right, so everyone should hold July 19th. The official notices obviously have not gone out, but we anticipate the next component to be July 19th.
I already have it on 5 p.m.
Yeah,
at 5 p.m.
Yeah, so July 19th at 5 p.m. for the continuation of this public hearing.
Okay. Peter, is there any additional information for the record that you think that we need to address? Okay. Any final comments or questions from council? And I'll head over to Councilor Thompson and Councilor Acholi. Is there any additional comments or questions that you have that you want addressed?
This is Smart. Just want to say thank you. Really great opportunities for all of us to participate in this. I mean, it's like you, Jamie, like you just mentioned, it's hard, but it's something that we have to do. So really appreciate everyone's patience as we go through this. I appreciate the contributions too. I mean, we just want to make sure that the residents have the chance to contribute and say what they feel about the whole project. So I think I really appreciate the fact that everyone is able to come in and we're given the opportunities to participate. So thank you. And I really appreciate you accommodating me also for today. Hopefully the next meeting I'll be there in person. We always have this time of the year is when we have more power generation. with everyone turning on their ACs and everything. So we have a lot of running around to make sure we're meeting demand. So sorry, I'm not there in person today. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Chole. I previously saw Councilor Thompson shake her head that she had no additional comments or questions. Last opportunity here in the room. All right. With that, I will entertain a motion. And just a point of clarification, we adjourn the public hearing or we continue. What is the appropriate method by which we close today's?
We continue to the date certain.
Okay. Okay.
We've identified as July 19th at 5 p.m.
Okay, so I'll entertain a motion regarding same.
I'd like to move that we continue the public hearing on July 19th at 5 p.m. and we adjourn for the day, suspend.
I wouldn't say adjourn because there's still a couple other agenda items that I need to work through really quick, and then we should be good to go. But
Just to continue the public hearing.
so we continue, essentially all public testimony has been closed now, with the exception of agency comments that we're waiting. And we will reconvene on July 19th at 5 p.m. to discuss, deliberate, and decide a course of action. And if adopted, we'll conduct a second reading at that point in time.
A second?
Second.
Yeah, all right. Been moved and seconded. Mike, you want to do a roll call or do you just want to?
Sure thing.
Okay.
Start with Councilor Manella. Oh, no, I'll start with Councilor Petrie, since she's not on.
Mm-hmm.
Councilor Manella?
Yes.
Councilor Moore?
Yes.
Councilor Thompson?
Yes.
Councilor Ocholi?
Yes.
Mayor Fender?
Yes. All right, the public hearing has been continued to July 19th at 5 p.m. All right. At this time, we will move into a 2-minute break, and then we will come back and address a few other items on the agenda at today's regular council session. We will be in recess for 2 minutes. Is this green? All right, we will now call to order the regular council meeting or regular council session. I don't believe we need to do a roll call since we're continuing on, but Mike, do you need us to do a roll call? All right, so moving on to approval of the minutes. We have the March 15, 2023 minutes to review, discuss, and make a motion. Does anyone have any correction or issue, or are we ready to adopt our minutes? Great.
I move we approve the March 15th, 2023 minutes as corrected.
Have a second?
We have corrected.
Because Ronnie corrected them.
Oh, yeah, no, that was just me forgetting to hit the publish button.
Oh, gotcha.
Got it. Okay.
Second.
All right. All those in favor of approving the March 15, 2023 minutes, raise your hand.
4 in-house. Councilor Ocholi and Councilor Thompson as well.
All right. We have the motion carries. We have no special presentations at this time. However, we will be happy to receive comments pertaining to items on the agenda, with the exception of public hearings for which testimony was and will be received and conducted in their proper form and manner at the time of the hearing, including suggestions, complaints, and items for the future. Each person's time will be limited to 3 minutes. We have no individuals left here in council chamber, so we have no in-person public comments at this time. Do we have any individuals on Zoom who wish to provide public comment for questions, complaints, and items for the future that does not relate to the master plan or Fisher Road. Or I should say, oh, let's be specific, or 2023-3 and 2023-2. All right, hearing none, we will move on to, there is no unfinished business. We will move on to new business. This, we have on the agenda, item A, resolution R-2023-6, a resolution adopting a transfer budget and making budget appropriations for the 2022 and 2023 fiscal year. We need to consider and discuss approving or disapproving the resolution. Mike, please give us your presentation.
Sure thing. It's a fairly simplistic transfer budget end of the year, make sure everything aligns. What we have is some increases on liability insurance. Those liability insurance elements have been captured into the revised transfer budget. We also had a significant increase in the amount of postage that we've had to purchase that's a function of the passports. And you'll see that it's almost a jump of $15,000 to $20,000 on postage. So the general fund, we had $40,000 adopted. We need $70,000 to make sure that we're under budget. So it's a pretty significant jump there. Other things that you'll see is we reduced a little bit of the vacation payout. I think that we're going to be okay on that front. But we moved some of that to other things like the special expense for the website and increased them from there, as well as increasing the liability insurance stuff that bumped us over.
Posted, we get some of that back, though.
Yeah, I mean, we have to budget it as an expense, but we don't necessarily budget the revenue because the revenue is surplus.
Any questions regarding resolution R-2023-06? Shauna or Smart, any questions related to the transfer budget or, resolution R-2023-06?
No, nothing from me. Thank you.
Correct, something I just said, which was that we did adjust for the revenue. That's 30,000. And then the expenditures was an adjustment of 17.5. So we're projecting that the additional revenue.
Got it. So noted. All right. At this time, I'll entertain a motion. If you needed, unless you need additional time to review, we can take another moment, but otherwise.
I'll move that we adopt or approve resolution R-2023-06.
Second.
Been moved and approved. Do you need a roll call, Mike, or do you want just hands?
Yeah, hands are good.
All right, all those in favor to adopt R-2023-06, please raise your hand.
We got 4 in-house, Councilor Shirley and Councilor Thompson as well, so 6 in favor.
So moved. All right. Moving on to city manager's report.
I just really have one thing to say, and that's we successfully got $127,000.
Yay.
32-hour track around King City Park. So
That's incredible.
Thank you, Rep. Neron, her staff, Mayor Fender, our staff, everyone for working collaboratively to make that happen. That's a huge win for King City, and special thanks for that.
Quick also shout out to Councilor Manellis, who also went down to see Rep. Neron with me, and we kind of talked a little bit about the park when we were there, took the opportunity to advocate on behalf of King City.
As many of you know, it's been a busy couple months. It's still going to be busy. We still have a packet to get out today for next week. It's going to be back to back to back until this, Kingston Terrace Master Plan, Transportation System Plan, the code amendments and everything is, complete. A lot's going on. Right now we're in debate, with the property that's between Bedford and Shakespeare and the property owners there on, Cedar Terrace and what that's gonna look like. There's a lot of dialogue going on and in-house as well as between those parties to try to reach some resolution and ultimate solution for that.
You're talking about the one that's under development?
And the one next to it that's being planned right now.
Okay.
So, we are trying to work through some complications and see if we can't get that. That being said, there's just this constant effort trying to keep up with everything that's going on with the planning side of the house. So I will leave it at that. I don't need to go into detail further. I'll let Mayor Fender talk about the DC trip. It was fun, exciting. I think we got a couple of our projects on their radar that were previously not on the radar at all. But I think time will tell each trip. Yeah, but congratulations on the funds from the Oregon State Legislature.
I just want to take a quick opportunity to acknowledge the significant hard work and ever-changing last-minute necessities this session. I will first say, I very much thank Rep. Neron and her staff. This was an extremely difficult session, as everyone knows. We don't need to belabor those issues. But the knock-on effect was that when opportunities came up throughout the session to continue to lobby, change, or provide additional information related to the funding request, it came at an exceptionally fast pace. And I just want to acknowledge and thank kind of Mike and city staff who responded at really just a lightning speed to provide the information requested, which was then able to be included in the funding request and put into the packet. So it's it was extremely frustrating, I'm sure, for Rep. Neron's office this session. I don't think those frustrations can be understated. But the knock-on effect was that Mike and the team had to kind of drop everything when questions came in so that they could respond quickly and get back. And that's extremely hard given the landscape that we know we're in right now and the amount of just crushing work that is upon them. So I really want to just thank you and applaud you for doing that. Certainly without you guys, we wouldn't have been able to get that money. So just thank you for that. Okay. Go ahead, yep.
One other funding thing that we have just came in, the intergovernmental agreement from Metro came in on the RFSA funds for the West Side Trail. So we have a scope of work for that. It's a measured scope on what we can actually get accomplished with the funds that we have. But like having these funds be freed up, now we can dedicate those funds to that project as well. So, it's a positive on one hand, it's also a positive on the other. So, I just wanted to give you a heads up to that. Intergovernmental agreement came in last night as well, along with everything else that came in last night. And I didn't have enough time to get it to you today, nor have you had time to review it. I was hopeful that I was going to get it like last week, but it managed to come in yesterday. So we'll have to hopefully get your authorization on that intergovernmental agreement in the very near future.
And then just so that everyone knows, when the email came in yesterday from Rep. Neron's office, I did ask that we do a joint press release. This is really historic for King City, to my knowledge. This is the first time that we're going to get state legislature funding. And it's kind of a historic moment. So I did ask that we do kind of a joint one. And then I also really would love to have Rep. Neron come down and we celebrate, do kind of a shovel, I don't know what those are called, not a ribbon cutting, but a shovel ready.
Renovation.
Whatever. So it is a huge historic monument, right? For such a tiny little city, right? To get that amount of funding, it's going to go a long way in our budget. There's still a few procedural steps that have to go through, right? It has to go to the Senate, and that we expect that to be passed to later this week, if not today or tomorrow, and then we should be able to. Mike, what do we estimate we'd be able to use that money in the next year, or?
We're shovel ready right now.
Okay.
So as soon as they authorize us to spend that money on it.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
So that maybe in the.
I just had a conversation, sorry.
No,
I
please.
just had a conversation with Philip Johnson this morning about our project. So that project is tentatively scheduled late summer.
Nice. Because we all know we cannot put it during the 4th of July. So we don't want it anytime in the next couple of weeks, but we will look forward to doing something fun at the end of the summer, beginning of fall. We always know that these projects get delayed, so we expect it in the fall. And
I think as soon as it goes through the Senate, my understanding is we should be eligible to utilize those funds.
Great.
Immediately, I would hope.
Right.
Because they want us shovel ready, we are
shovel ready. We just need that money to hit our account.
Right, that's right.
Awesome.
So hopefully we can move on to that.
Great. Thank you. That is amazing. And I look forward to the new surface of our safe truck. All right. And other things. Right. Well, let's not. All right. Anything else, Mike? Okay. Let's go to Shauna and Smart. Let's have you guys go first if you're ready. If not, we can go to Councilor Petrie, but we're going to go to Councilor Petrie. Oh, wait. No, is he Shauna Thompson? Sure. I did, in case you guys needed to jump off, I just wanted to give you an opportunity to put yours on the record first if you want.
You need to jump off. The only thing that I wanted to talk about was that I went to the League of Oregon Cities conference last month or a couple months ago. Gosh, I don't remember when it was now. I want to say April. I think it was in April. And I don't have my notes that I was going to talk about. But overall, one of my takeaways was that there are a ton of grants out there. They kept saying that over and over. Everyone that spoke was talking about all the grants that are available. And I just don't know how we can access all of them without having a grant writer. But one of the small groups I was in, one of the other small cities in Oregon was talking about how they share a grant writer with a few other cities. So I'm not sure if that's something that we could do, sharing. I thought it was a good idea. That's all I
have to wrap that into the planner piece.
Sean, I don't know if you heard that, but Mike is trying to wrap in a component of grant writing into the planner, the open position for the planner that's coming, because not to give you a little preview of my comments coming soon, we found the exact same thing at the federal level, that there really is a ton of grants out there regionally, locally, at the state level, at the federal level, by private organizations, private companies. And it's so difficult because, one, it's very competitive, but two, you really need someone who knows what they're doing. You really need a good grant writer to understand the criteria for the grant to even be competitive, because they're so competitive. And it's just so hard. I totally commiserate. So.
That's all I had.
All right, thank you. And Councilor Tolley, anything to update us with?
Jamie, so for water report, I do not have one because they do have a kind of little bit of employee movement at the Tigard Council and management as well. I think someone retired and now they have a new person that's doing it, and I didn't get an invite for the last meeting. I tried to use the previous login information I had and it did not work. I reached out and no one responded, so I did not attend the meeting. I'm trying to work that now before the next meeting. So sorry, I don't have anything to report regarding water today. Sorry, I know we kind of went over the budget earlier. One thing I forgot, and I was trying to remember or recall was, this is for Mike and maybe the staff. I think the last time we kind of talked about and this can be for the next meeting too, not today. It doesn't have to be today. We did talk about the passport and the revenue and the staff and the workload on the staff and all that. Is there a way for the staff to put together something to show that if we add one more person to kind of maybe help with the workload, what's that going to do? Are we able to regenerate more or provide more services that will bring in more revenue with one person added, and maybe take off the workload from the staff, current staff, or just something to kind of give us an idea as to what we can do to kind of help the staff with the volume of work volume of services that is kind of demanded from our staff for passport. So this can be for next time, not today. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Let's maybe push that to a discussion on a future agenda. Just right. And I think the question is I think the question is an additional person needed at this time, right? So.
Well, the center should give us another day, maybe, like part of their job would
quarter of
be,
their time or something.
Yeah, a day at the counter. You know, give me half a day here, half a day there at the counter to help out with passport. It's basically an all hands on deck thing, but I think every warm body we bring in that is capable of handling a little bit of passport provides a little bit of relief. And I don't think that we have enough planner work. Well, there is enough planner work at this moment in time, but like adding half a day here, half a day there at the front counter, perhaps from their ability to do that job.
Good. All right.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Smart. We'll start on this end.
Okay, I don't have many updates, but I do want to say congratulations to all of the kids who just graduated from any high schools or colleges. So, congrats all King City kids and young adults.
Awesome, thank you.
The only thing I have is I attended the annual meeting for the Metropolitan Area Communications Commission, which is MAC. And as part of that, approved was a bundle of a bunch of grants. And so King Cities was in that and got approved for the $15,321 that was requested.
Oh,
so
nice.
That was for PCM
That's awesome.
connectivity. Yeah.
That's great.
So that was done, and that's all I have to report.
Wonderful. Councilor Petrie?
Sure. So I have some updates for you. I'll try to keep it brief here for the April and May, combining together both MPAC and JPAC. So first on MPAC, the Metro Policy Advisory Committee. So in April, they had a presentation concerning the 2040 Planning and Development Grants. And they're now starting cycle 11, which began in April. And for cycle 11, they've added 2 new grant categories. One is industrial land readiness and small business support. So new thing. They usually have about $2.5 million for the grants, but this year they're expecting maybe $4 million. And for this cycle, letters of interest are due in June, and full applications are due in August. Screening and interviews will be in September, and recommendations to Metro will be in November. So there's time to do something with that. There was a report from Metro and VLCV with an update on Oregon housing needs analysis. So they're looking to make some changes to Oregon Goal 10 on housing, and they're now looking to refocus, interestingly, on production, affordability, and choice, and to identify new resources for local governments. Yes. They had an update on the draft report on high-capacity transit. Potential corridor projects have been divided into 4 tiers. I think we all knew that. But the questions from the committee were, how does the jurisdiction move up into tiers? And it was suggested to look for grants to improve readiness, planning, and to make infrastructure improvements. So they're really looking at, again, if you're ready for something. Then there were reviews of the 2023 RTP project list and the draft system analysis in both April and May, and they're working on summarizing reports for the community outreach feedback. That's all for MPAC. JPAC has several interesting things. In April, they had a resolution they passed on to Metro to add 3 projects to MTIP, which is the Metro Transportation Improvement Program, which will allow them to start preliminary engineering and meet federal requirements. One important project that I thought was interesting is the Kellogg Creek Dam Restoration Project in Oregon City. And this dam removal and new bridge over Highway 99E will ultimately restore 15 miles of fish habitat.
Wow.
So that's pretty cool. In May, a resolution passed approving 6 federally authorized projects to be added to the 2021-2024 MTIP. One of interest to us is the earmark for Southwest Hall Boulevard, which will add enhanced pedestrian crossings at Southwest Spruce and Southwest Hemlock. That's coming. Another resolution in May approved allocating $18.8 million of carbon reduction program funds to 5 capital and planning projects to be included in the 2024-2027 MTIP. And the project closest to us is the TV Highway Rapid Bus project. May meeting also included updates to the draft of the high capacity transit strategy report, which is something you're talking about. Of note is that the placement of projects in the 4 priority tiers still relies on ridership demand and available infrastructure. This is why 99 is in tier 4. There was further discussion on the RTP project list in April and May at JPAC. They were moving into the final stages of preparing the draft of the 2023 RTP. Last week, JPAC passed the resolution to advise Metro to release the draft for the 45 days of public review. If Metro approves, the public comment period will be July 10th, August 25. So there is still time for input from all of us if we don't like the way that the rankings have been on the current RTP.
Great.
Then one other thing I wanted to say, and that takes care of the 2 reports in brief on those 2, but last Saturday, Ronnie and I helped Red Cross do their blood drive, and it was a success. They had 23 donors. We got in 20 units of whole blood and 2 power reds, which exceeded their Red Cross's goal for this drive.
Yay, congratulations. Thank you for that, you guys. That was amazing.
Worked out well.
Awesome. All right. I mean, I could go on and on and on about our trip to DC, so I'll just give a kind of quick overview, and then we can kind of continue discussions because it has been a long day already. So first, this trip to DC was the 40th trip of JPAC to DC, and it just so happened that we had 40 delegates who attended. That was unprecedented. It was the largest group that ever went, and that number just was happenstance. They did not organize that, although with hindsight, I think they should have, but it just happened that way. So we had, let's see, we had 7 mayors. We had 4 counties because we have the tri-counties, but then also Mayor Ann and her team from Vancouver and Clark County also attended. And then there was city staff, there were county staff, and then, of course, there were 3 commissioners, Commissioner Fye and Commissioner Rogers from Washington County, and then the gentleman from Clackamas County, which I desperately apologize for forgetting his name. It's, again, been a long day. We're there. So it was a very cohesive group. Oh, and I apologize. We also had representatives of ODOT, TriMet, then the kind of some local transportation companies, and Vancouver, right, and the port, Port of Portland and Port of Vancouver. And the amount of knowledge that was gleaned from this trip, I just couldn't put it all here. We would be here for hours and hours, but it was a phenomenal experience in being able to sit down and have kind of time with these agencies and city staff and to learn about kind of what they're working on, why they're working on it, right? Just as an example, take the I-5 bridge crossing to Vancouver. One of the things that I did not know ahead of time before this was all of the crystals that Intel uses in their chips are only grown in Vancouver. And so all of Intel's chips, so all the crystals that go into the chips, right, come from Vancouver, and of course have to get out to Hillsborough, and so therefore they have to cross the bridge. So the importance of the I-5 bridge, I don't think I quite understood why, obviously as a regional importance, it's very clear to both the state of Washington and the state of Oregon, but on
Travel at 5 miles per hour.
right. But for a federal level, right, if you talk about the importance of Intel to the U.S. economy, and you look at the impacts of what that bridge, I think they talked about there's, over $700 million that go across that bridge daily in commerce, and it could be higher than that. I can't remember I don't have the figures in front of me, so please don't quote me on it and put it on next door. It is very important, however. So things like that were just amazing. But more to the point of how important it was for King City, I think if we, I mean, no disrespect to any agency or any other government, but where we started was the assumption that Mike Weston was the mayor of King City, and that there was an unfamiliarity with King City, one, being a city, and two, where that even was. If that's where we started, by the end of the trip, we advanced King City at kind of an exponential rate, in my opinion, and it was just really phenomenal to be able to get that time in with people, to talk with them. I don't want to kind of belabor this point, but I think it shows, right, putting in the time to get in front of our representatives, either at the state level or at the federal level, and really building those relationships really ends, those efforts are imperative because it ends with dollars in our city. And I think that's exemplary with the park funding that Rep. Neron was able to secure for us, right? She and I have been working on that for almost 4 years now, 3 years, since really the start of her representation, or at least the start of me, with her talking about it. But, and I'm sure Mayor Gibson had previously, right, not to undermine any work that he did, but those individual efforts that I myself kind of on behalf of the city are working on, and what Mike does in trying to forge those relationships are just extremely important. With that being said, it was a difficult trip because the state of our federal government, like the state of our state government, was really in shambles when we were there. It was very clear that there's a lot of dysfunction. I think we all know that. It doesn't matter what side of the aisle you are on. The likelihood of getting funding right now out of the federal government is slim to none. And of the little tiny amounts of funding that are available out there, it is such a competitive field that really, I think the big takeaway on some of these project applications for funding, they not only have to, you don't have any chance in getting funding if your application isn't perfect and you hit every single criteria, because every single city across the United States has the same ask right now. Literally every city, small, tiny, huge, whatever, has multiple projects which are just as imperative and qualifying as any other. And so really the discussion has to be about how do we set ourselves apart? What pushes us up in ranking over someone else, right? And really the answer to that, Frank Bubenek and I talked a lot about this, is really about coming together and forming coalitions, right? So this concept of each little individual city going out for a separate grant and competing against the other cities around them is probably no longer a great model, right? Because there just is so many pieces of the pie that can be doled out. And so there's a great effort right now to try to come together and cohesively apply for funding. And we saw that during our trip there. So let me back up just a little bit. The overarching trip was the JPAC delegation, and we presented 6 projects to various staff and to our representatives at the federal level, these 6 regional projects, okay? However, Washington County, WCCC, we broke off on a day and we went and then advocated and presented to our federal representatives in Washington County a list of specific projects. On behalf of King City, I discussed 99, Highway 99. Obviously, we do not have a project that we have to put in front of the federal government at this time, but we wanted to alert them that coming down the pipeline, that the needs of 99 have to be addressed. We're not getting it addressed at the state level. Cities like Tualatin and Tigard, and to some degree us, are having to spend our own resources to address some of the issues which should be covered by the state and aren't. An example of that is some of the sidewalks and ADA compliance with sidewalks along 99. And that we really wanted to start discussion about how do we get past this catch-22 that we're in, that, right, density equals ridership, right, equals, right, all of it. So we kind of talked about that. While we were there, Mayor Frank Bubenek of Tualatin presented a grant application on behalf of the city of the city of Tualatin, but that would benefit kind of all of us in this region. It was a broadband, it was a electronic vehicle recharging station grant, and 15 different cities signed on letters of support, including King City. There were 3 different counties, multiple private agencies. They had already figured out, with federal grants, there's usually a 20% matching program. Mayor Bubenek had already gotten private funding components to cover that 20%. So the great grant application. So we were able to sit there and talk about that. And so taking those opportunities and sitting and going to dinner and talking about other ways that we can create coalitions was phenomenal. On one of the days, and I'll wrap up soon, on one of the days, we went to the Department of Transportation. Very sad we didn't get to see the director, but we did see a lot of his staff. And one of the things that we learned about was this new bill that's come out recently called Build America Better. The acronym is BAB. And BAB really provides a funding source for transportation dependent programs. And the breadth of what that means is huge. So for example, some BAB funding is going to, they did not disclose which library, but I would assume it's the Multnomah County Library, but they talked about a library in Portland has been able to secure BAB funding because they are transport dependent, meaning that some people can only access the library by driving there and then having to park and go into the library. And so they were able to get BAB funding, which then they were used for like the 20% of some grant funding, but also just direct funding for the project. So it is an opportunity that's out there. It is a loan program. I just want to be very clear when I say funding, it's a loan program, an alternative type of loan program. But what they've done under BAB is any city under 100,000 residents is considered rural, and rural, there's just all these additional opportunities for rural cities. So it is something that later in time, we have the ability to kind of look into, and maybe it might be a funding source at some point way down the line. But it was quite, you're telling me?
Maybe be able to use to build some.
Right.
City Hall.
Yeah, and it is absolutely designed for, it is absolutely designed to help cities who don't have any money to build the infrastructure that's desperately needed, but can be applied far afield, right? So not, I think traditionally when we think about multimodal, transportation, I think, we are only thinking about, roads, paths, so forth. But here, right, structures can be built, parks can be built, right? Recreational, other things, docks, right? If you think of in King City, so many of our residents who maybe have mobility challenges, right, can only get down to our municipal park that we have right now through a vehicle of some sort, right? And that is a transportation dependent project. So anyway, it was very, very interesting that this has come up. And so one thing that is absolutely clear, which we will have to discuss at a much later time because we don't have the funding, but King City has no chance in getting federal dollars without a lobbyist. It is just a lobbyist who's based in DC. It is just the nature of, in my opinion, how things are done. If you look at all the other cities, right? So on this trip, right, we met with lobbyists for Washington County, for various larger cities within the county. They all have their own individual lobbyists. Clearly, we do not have the budget to hire our own slick DC lobbyists. However, right, this idea of coalition again comes back into play. So is there a project that maybe we want to go after in the future, and it's a project that we do with Tualatin and Sherwood, and maybe the three of us go in on a project-specific lobbyist that we hire between the three of us. And so I think really this kind of cooperation and cohesion is really kind of the path forward down the line. So I also, again, I don't think we have to, this is certainly not up for discussion now or going to be put on the agenda, but down the line, I think going to DC once a year is going to be kind of required. And I think we need to be really strategic and really thoughtful because it is an expensive trip, and always being fiscally responsible here is very important. But I think Mike and I made just huge advancements on behalf of the city at this kind of level, and with the agencies and organizations and individuals who are going to these, on these federal trips, right? And we just have never been, this is the first trip to DC on behalf of the city of King City. And I think we have a place at the table now, and I don't want us to slide backwards and lose that spot because we don't continue that hard work. So I think going forward, maybe at our goal session each year, we should really try to identify what's going to be in the best interest of the city at this level, right? And maybe it's not maybe we decide, not every year has an opportunity that we think is really beneficial, but I think we need to take a look at it and evaluate it each year to make sure that we have at least one trip. And certainly it doesn't have to be me every time that goes. Mike has to go every time because it's just required. But, right, I think, that's something that we should kind of think about. And there were a lot of fun things, fun stories that came out. I'll save those for another time, like Mike leaving me at the airport. But we can talk about that later. Anyway, so it was a great trip. I will be putting up some photos on a personal level. Mike and I had an opportunity to go and tour the mall and tour some infrastructure kind of around the city and see some. I think there's kind of bikes and right, they have the scooters. That was really interesting to kind of get around. We were there on June 6th, which of course is D-Day, and so it was very poignant to be in the mall and reflect on that. We went to the Vietnam Memorial Museum, or the Vietnam Memorial, and there was an honor flight there, which was very moving to see and be a part of. And then I'm sure I have 1,000 other things to report, but the only thing I don't believe last time on Flag Day, did I report on this last time?
We did, this is our first report.
Oh, we moved it. Okay, so last week on Flag Day, I attended the King City Senior Village held a phenomenal event for the veterans that are residents there. They had organized a flyover, organized the names of the motorcycle ride along, or ride, I don't know what the appropriate name is to call them, but basically the motorcycle enthusiasts who do I think they're called ride-ons is what they're called, but basically a lot of them are veterans or they support veterans events, so they came. The mayor of Tigard, Heidi Lube, joined us. We did a ribbon ceremony. There was a barbecue, and then I had the immense pleasure of presenting. I believe the final number was 26 veterans with quilts of valor, and that was very wonderful to be able to do that. Then Dave Runyon had suggested many months ago that we do a flag disposal here at King City, and so we had the Girl Scout Troop 12085, I believe, and they came and we had 7 flags that community members had handed in that needed to be disposed of. The Girl Scouts did a flag ceremony, took down our flag at City Hall and folded it, and then took possession of that flag and the 7 other flags that had been handed in that all need to be disposed of properly and with respect. And the girls did a phenomenal job. They are going to get a badge for this because this was the first time that they did and I believe it's a color guard ceremony. I could be wrong on that. I apologize if that is not the right terminology, but basically this was the first time they were going to do it. We have discussed going forward. This is a great opportunity, and we would like to invite them back and do this every year for Flag Day. It's a great opportunity to change our flag out. I learned that the Scouts protocol is that you remove or you take down the flag in the evening, but you do not put the new flag up until the next morning to pay respect to the flag that had been hung, and therefore we did not have them come back and put it back up, but we will do that probably next time. And for community members, it's important to know that you can hand in your flag here at City Hall, and then we will every so often give the flags to the Girl Scouts for them to dispose of. So at some point, Mike, we might want to do kind of like a little display or a box or something that the community knows that they can do that. We'll kind of continue to work on that. But that is all I have. It is a lot. I will be posting a lot of photos. There are photos of the event, the Flag Day events on my Facebook page, if you want to go take a peek at that. I have not yet put the thousands of photos that I took in DC. I had made Mike a promise when we first went out on our one day that I would not stop every 10 feet and take a photo, and that lasted about 27 seconds. So I took thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of photos, and some of them will be posted on my official page, not all of them. With that, that's kind of everything. That was a lot. And unless we have anything else, I think we are done for the day.
Flagpole though.
We absolutely need a new flagpole. And we absolutely need a new flagpole. And this is so funny because so when I was at the Hillsborough Air Show, there was a flagpole vendor there, and I almost grabbed his card, but I did not. But I told Dave Runyon that I will be going to the McMinnville Air Show, And if that vendor, I assume the same vendors will be there, I will grab the information because they have this whole cool new system and it was quite interesting. I don't know if we have to send it out for RFP to install. But I will gain some information there. But yes, we absolutely need a new flagpole. Yeah. All right, that was a drink of water from a fire hydrant. So there's a ton more information, so we can talk about it later. But
Okay.
with that, I think we're done. If we have a motion.
Make a motion to adjourn the meeting?
All in favor, raise your hand.
I see Smart's hand, that's 5, and
Sean,
Counselor Thompson fell off.
Okay.
So 5 in favor, and then
All right, we are adjourned. Thank you.